to
Yeah, record on your own because
okay.
what I'm going to do next week is I'm going to give you the Zencaster password because one, then you have it if you ever want to use it, but then two, you can just record separately. The only reason I don't do is just because I put a strain on this computer. My plan is within this year is to replace it, but that's
Yeah.
why anytime someone else was recording, like if I do one with Greg or Kirkland, they're always recording on their end. It's if I wasn't hosting the video side, I'd be
Mhm.
completely fine, but the video side just drains the Mac Air of any life it has. So I literally all I have open. That's why I have my two phones beside me throughout the cast because I don't touch the computer. All I
Yeah.
have is the Zoom and the recording. That's it. I don't even want to mess around with it. So and it's also because like it's stupid of me, but it's a look thing. Like I could use the webcam here, but I like using the nice Sony 7A whatever camera we bought. So it's like
Yeah.
I could, but it's like So yeah, next week I think I'll do that. And then because what happens is you can record, but then I can just log on and take it from you. You don't even have to email me or anything.
Well,
It's
if it
just
works out, if I might try to use it for World's Finest, maybe
oh
in a
yeah.
couple of weeks, just to try it. And if it works out better, I'll drop my subscription to Squadcast.
Yeah, just as long as just make sure it checks with me or Greg because two people can't be on it at once. It's like the same thing
True,
as
true.
Zoom. Yeah,
Yeah, and I'll definitely check beforehand. At that point, in worst case, my recordings I try to do Wednesdays and Thursdays.
yeah, which we're
At that.
usually not, and we can coordinate. And the good thing is with us at Geek First, we're always recording like later because we're Pacific time, right? So you guys are
Yeah,
mostly in bed when we're like we're doing our like
you're
cast
you're
like
you're doing your 3 hour. Oh, we'll just stay up till Wandavision at that point.
that was not a mistake last week, but we were like, whatever. It's almost and like a Kirkland, he won't. Well, this won't be in the opening, but Kirkland has this act of he wants to stay up, but he won't. But so we've decided if he doesn't work the Friday, we're gonna do casts on Thursday to make him stay up. So that's his way. Because then he was like, I'm ready to go. But like before, he'd always be like, yeah. And then me and Kurt Taylor would finish up. So we message him. And it's like, oh, we don't see a red message. We don't see anything. Oh, he's asleep. We're not. So there we go. Got the
All right,
people live, but.
let me hit record on my end. Three.
Sounds
All
good.
right,
And
so
then
I'm
I will share this
recording.
and then we're good to go.
All right, then I'll wait.
Throws me off because we took those two A and MA are not the same number. So I'm always trying to figure out. But now I've tried to figure out the math in my head that we're always two behind as right now. So
Yeah. Let me see. Get to
before it was so easy, I just know I knew what we were doing. It's this
Marvel.
number, but all right.
Tried to dress a little appropriate today with the Captain America.
Yeah, I should have. I'm wearing this shirt. This is a shirt. It's from Miz the wrestler. The reason I'm wearing this is because I have a plethora, a back catalog of shirts that I'm wearing one more
Mm-hmm.
time before I get rid of. That's that's why. I know I should have went with the cap one, but there we go. So yes, anytime sir, you were ready, I'm ready. The people know. Everyone knows the people.
That for the people.
Hmm. I hate Facebook stories and click accident when I'm scrolling my chubby fingers, and it's just like, come on. I hate on Twitter when I accidentally try to send a fleet. I've never done it, but I accidentally like.
Oh, I'm not that adventurous to do it. I don't even. I barely know what it is.
I've done it accidentally, and then like I haven't made it post, but it'll be like, "You want to share this as a fleet?" It's like, no, I don't want to share this as a fleet. But
What the heck's a
whatever.
fleet?
Yeah.
All right. All right. Let me get into YouTube on my phone. So, because I do kind of do what you do, I watch it from my phone. Oh, very nice images. I like it.
Of what?
Of the beekeeper and
Oh,
and
yeah. It's funny when I found that image, you can see more outlines of the beekeeper's face than you can in the episode. Not enough to
yeah.
know who he is, but it's
Yeah, I knew they were hiding it, so I was not surprised when we got to see a little bit of face. But we have lots to talk about with that. So
it's foggy under there.
He makes his first appearance.
Mhm.
All right, so let's do this in 3, 2, 1. Welcome to the Marvel Alliance podcast, where we cover anything and everything to do with the Marvel Universe. From comics, TV, to the movies, we go from the Mojoverse to Earth 616 to the Negative Zone to bring the Marvel Universe right to you. My name is the Uncanny Chris.
I'm the podcaster of Mischief Trust. No.
Alliance, assemble.
Assemble. Boom. We're at volume 32. How you doing today, Chris?
I am doing well, a little tired. It's a long podcasting week for me, so this will be day 2 of 3 in a row. So it's
Mhm.
I do this, as some of our friends at Squadcast Media say, we do this for the people.
We do for the people, and that's why I know I'm going to promote it in plugs. But obviously, everybody go listen to DCA because you kicked it off and talking about doing overtime. You did a great interview with Sean O'Connell. One great interview. Two, hopefully nabbed him for a Marvel Alliance in the future. But yeah, no, you did really good. It was a fun conversation. It was great, and I'm excited for that book to come out. I was just talking about my little brain needs that audio book because I can't read as fast as molasses. But yeah, it was great to get an insight of I've never written a book before, but it was great to get his insight and kind of start.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that just is a good sign for the book. If I like him talking about it, I imagine I'm going to like what's in the book. So good job, sir, there.
No, thank you very much. It was a good get. And if he happens to be listening, thank you, Mr. O'Connell, Sean, as it were,
Yeah.
for
He's like, I
coming
agreed
on.
to do the podcast with Chris, not this Travis guy. My God. He has to get the boot if we're going to do that. But as we were
But yeah,
talking about this, yeah, go ahead.
good start of the week. Good start of the week.
Yeah, no, it was a good start of the week. Tomorrow's going to be even better start, I think, in America, but that's another topic for another time. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Geek All Alliance. This is Marvel Alliance, like I said, number 32. But we are part of the network. Mondays is World's Finest Troop Leader. Chris, you just had a new podcast drop talking about some Aquaman. I
Yep,
heard.
the beginning of Jeff Johns' run of the New 52 run with Frank Martin. He's got a Kickstarter right now, the Polar Paradox. So if you can check that out in the episode drop for that one, give it a go. Last time I checked yesterday, it was very close to hitting its goals. So I think it's got another week and a half to go. But yeah, he's very nice guy. Not his first kicks, not necessarily his first book. He's published a lot of different books, but definitely a good Kickstarter campaign that he's got going on for this new project he's working on. So fun times.
Yeah, and if you are a Kickstarter, Chris is the Kickstarter whisperer. You know, people love talking to him. So go over there and do that. As long as you got a good conversation, a good book you want to talk about. But yeah, we have podcasts 7 days a week, 10 shows, like we just mentioned. World Finance True Believers. DC is on Tuesday, like we just talked about. If you are listening to this live, we are live on Tuesdays, and if not, the podcast feed on every Wednesday. Thursday is a nice triple threat of bi-weeklies of Power Rangers, Slice of Film, and Star Wars Alliance. Go check out Star Wars Alliance. They just reviewed Light of the Jedi last week. Ranger Alliance will be back this week. Friday is superhero discussions. I think they're getting into almost the 40s soon of Batman animated
Yeah.
series. And I like all these rumors. This is one of the things when we talk about managing expectations. I do not want to get overhyped for these Batman revival series, but I just want it so bad, especially because right now on HBO Max, me and my daughter are watching them all. We had a great Sunday before the playoffs. She's just loving them now. She's into Penguin a lot now, so that's great. But yeah, so you check them out there, and then Fridays on their page, SCS records live, and then Saturdays on the audio feed, and then Saturday, Sunday is Weird Science, bringing Marvel and DC comics around it. And there's tons going on in comic books right now. You got King in Black is picking up, like Venom 200's coming up, DC Future Stock is coming, or Future State's coming up. So it's just like they got just comics are just popping off right now with big events, big stories, big characters. So it's a good thing because I don't get to read everything. I know you guys are going to do some on Future State, so I'm excited, but
Yeah.
especially on the Marvel side too, it's good for me because I'm one person that goes, okay, I'm going to read this all when it's collected, barring a few issues. Like when I heard that Tom Taylor is doing Batman, I'm like, that's one maybe I can't resist because I love Tom Taylor. But those shows are great for if you don't know if you want to buy something or if you're a little uneasy. Jim gives you a good rundown because Jim is talking comics literally, I think, on the daily. I literally think on the daily, so he has a good grasp of what's going on.
Oh yeah, no, it's good stuff. Yeah, I think I just saw the release of the issue 200 got released, and they say it's not only the end of King in Black, but also a game changing for Eddie Brock and Venom.
Yeah, and I wasn't sure if it was the end of the run, just that story, or am I reading it wrong as far as it's the end of Donny Cates' run? Like he's gonna move on. Maybe I read that wrong.
I didn't get too in depth of the article.
Okay, yeah,
So it might have been his end, but I don't want to say for sure. I haven't heard any kind of big announcement if it is the end of his run. It would, hey, you know what? He led to this moment, so it wouldn't surprise me if he wanted to leave at the top.
yeah. Well, I'm excited for that run, even if he's not done. Just this run in particular to end, because then I have a lot of reading to do because everyone just says major good things about it. So, and then on Patreon, you can go get early ad-free exclusive episode. There's multiple tiers you can join, and we appreciate all the support. You guys keep this machine running. That you hear all the shows, you hear all the people. That's because of you guys. You're helping us grow, and we really appreciate that. You've heard Chris talk about it in the future. This month, we hopefully have some Patreon exclusive, you guys, like we just talked about, talking about DC Future State, but try and do some other stuff. My schedule's a little crazy, but I do at some point owe Traz and Katie separately a Patreon exclusive episode. But there's good stuff up there, just even the past. I think there's over, I think about 7, 8 like Patreon exclusive stuff up there already. So pretty good. So have I missed anything, Chris?
Nope. Yeah, I think myself, Joe, Clay, and Tony will record that next Tuesday before Marvel Alliance. We'll record that Patreon. That's
Very
at least what
nice.
we've decided to do.
That's exciting. Yeah,
Yep.
especially because it's, I don't want to say it's like super mixed, but it's like everyone, I feel like there's not a full on narrative for DC Future State. I just see like a lot of takes. So that's going to be a really interesting
Yeah,
conversation.
it'll be good. We're looking forward to it.
And then I had to show off one thing that came in
All
today,
right.
my Moon Knight
Oh, look at
Volume
that.
1 Omnibus. Yeah, it is a thick boy. It is over 1,000 pages. It's heavy. It smells just it smells like fresh paint. But yeah, I was pretty excited when I got home and lifted this heavy box. And I think my fiance, this is the Christmas present that I got. So, and this is the reason I'm also showing this here because yeah, Marvel and Moon Knight, but this is the result of Chris because I saw all the stuff he had. And you know what? I'm getting back into it. So eventually behind me, I'm gonna have a desk. But I got this one, and then I got the Tom Taylor Wolverine one coming, and then I don't
Nice.
know what's next. But yeah, I'm gonna start going. But yeah, I
Well,
love the back.
welcome.
Yeah, welcome
Welcome.
back. Yeah, I used to when I was younger, and then it was like, no, Travis, you moved out. You got to get a job, and now it's like, oh, I got a nice job now, and I love the background. It just shows you how many stories, and yeah, it's great. So it goes all the way from 1975 to 1982. So I'm excited this weekend. I'm gonna bust it open, and I want to sit down and actually really enjoy instead of I don't know my reading thing what I'm gonna do, but I don't want to read a little bit. I want to like have a nice day. I'm gonna sit down Saturday, Sunday's playoffs. I'm gonna sit down and just read a bunch of chapters, and yeah.
Well, make sure to stretch that spine. Stretch that
Oh
spine
yeah,
before you read it. Don't
yeah.
be, and I'll also tell you this: do not read it flat on the surface. You'll blow out the spine eventually. So you got to read it at that 45-degree angle.
Oh yeah. Oh, I have kids too. You can't put it down like that. They're gonna grab everything. I gotta hold it with my
Uh,
hands and protect it.
oh yeah. Well, as my favorite YouTube show, Omar from Near Mint Condition says, I like my books thicker as a Snickers bar. So
Well, ladies and gentlemen, we are finally here. We got a bunch of stuff, but what we're gonna be doing for the next few weeks is I guess the next 7 weeks after this is unless there's some earth-shattering news, like they come on and they say, yes, Hugh Jackman is back as Wolverine. WandaVision is going to be our main topic, and it's a great main topic. But yeah, so we're going to do a show review. We're going to talk about some theories and stuff in maybe episode 3, and then we're going to get into news. But it's exciting because this is our first MCU content. We've been waiting. There's been delays, but I want to throw to you, Chris, because you and I have only talked a little bit. You and I have more of just shown like theories and talk about that. We actually talked about
yeah.
like that, and like obviously I reviewed it, but I'm excited to hear your thoughts and talk in depth with you. So, sir, what did you think of the first 2 episodes of WandaVision?
I thought it was, again, it's one of those things I've been trying to go back and forth in my head. It's been over a year since we've had Marvel content, so there was that just excitement to have, content of this kind of genre out there, let alone Marvel, DC, something like this, and the amount of anticipation just to have it being now the new start of Phase 4.
Yeah.
I've been kind of wrestling back and forth in the sense of, you know, is it my excitement for it, or is it because it's really is it a good way to open Phase 4? And I have to say I really enjoyed it because, as I kind of explained to my wife when she was, I've seen it 3 times, both episodes, once with her, and didn't give her kind of any real background of it, which
Mhm.
will get into kind of my review, and I like having her as my kind of guinea pig for this. I already knew this was going to be a mystery, so they have my attention in the sense of they're playing quote unquote a long game, but I mean a long game within 9 episodes.
Yeah.
But so I'm the kind of person of noticing not only the Easter eggs, but the little hints and words and how they're saying and what they're saying and what's going on. So I like picking it apart like that because that's what a good show that's kind of a mystery is. So
Mhm.
I've enjoyed it. It is one of these shows that I think more people are going to gravitate towards it when it's over and binge it that way. But we could talk more about that a little bit.
Yeah, it's been interesting to see the reception, and Brent's in the chat saying we better be talking about the actual main topic story, and if he's referring to the character
Oh, yes.
potentially
Totally
getting a
forgot
movie,
that.
Brent, you're gonna have to wait a little while on that one. But maybe Dust shows up here because you don't know, because this show is weird, and I think that's the best thing I was talking about too with my fiance, because I watched it once alone, and then we watched it, and then I tweeted this out, but for some reason my oldest daughter has like a fascination with this show. I haven't figured out why. I'm not sure if because Vision wrote, she's seen them before. I'm not sure if it's just like the childish nature of it, but every day she asks when there's a new WandaVision. So it's very strange. She's like Spider-Verse, the Batman animated series, but the live action stuff, she'll always kind of watch and then she kind of peters off like, yeah, I'm gonna go do my stuff. I don't really care. But this is like the first thing she sat down. So very strange. So I have that, but I did the same thing of like even there's some stuff I haven't, like, we'll talk about maybe a certain witch or whatnot. I haven't filled her in on that because it's like, what, I just because I know that stuff. And I asked her, like, do you want me to or not? And she's like, I don't know. So I'm like, no, you just watch it. It's going to be good to see like her reaction. But it's been fun to see just the world's reaction, because I think us in the know, like if you and I or the people that listen to the show kind of had a grasp of, okay, this is going to be a weird show. It's going to be different. And I think the
Yeah.
general audience knew that, but I don't think they knew how much different. And again, this is because of us. I got tipped off by people that had reviewed. I never read a review, but you hear people talk, you see tweets
Yeah.
of, hey, this is even weirder than you think. So I knew going in that kind of set my
Hmm.
expectations, and I've really enjoyed it. It's one of these things of it's tough because when I was on Geek for Some, like what would I rate it? Like I wouldn't want to give it like a 10 out of 10 or 5 but like for me and what I was expecting the show, I have no cons of it yet. And I think it's even in a whole aspect, it's like I'm gonna have to wait till it's finished to see how it all goes along. Because so far I'm just enjoying it. And the thing that surprised me is, of course, I enjoy the mystery, the intrigue, the thrill, but was surprising to me is I actually still enjoyed the fake stuff. I always worried that would be like, am I just waiting to get to the good stuff? And it's like, even if I want the mystery stuff, but even if we're just making this weird WandaVision like comedy show, I actually ended up enjoying that. And I think we talked about this in the lead up. We talked about how they looked into things and shows and talked to Dick Van Dyke. But to me, it's just dripping in like a passion project for all those shows. It feels like they really did go to sitcom camp or, classic TV camp and really learn this. And I think I can see people pushing, like, this is one of these, if you come to me and say, not my cup of tea, I go, I understand
Yeah.
completely. Maybe
Hmm.
watch the
I
end,
do
or
too.
maybe it's not for you. But I think this is the best thing because I think, and some people might roll their eyes, but I think this is like easily the most risky thing MCU's ever done. They're at a point where they can take these risks because of Endgame and whatnot, and they have this established track record. Marvel is a brand, so they can do that. But it's just like the first 2 episodes of this are almost basically just a 60s 70s sitcom with a little mystery in there, and to me that's pretty risky for a franchise that's pretty much sci-fi action.
Hmm. Yeah. I've said it before. I think I've said it in the sense of this is a chance for Marvel to get a little weird and lean into it and be
Mhm.
experimental. And that's why you could do this as a streaming show and take that risk versus putting it into a theatrical run.
Could you imagine if they try this in theatrical? It's just like I think this would have been that one where it's like, oh yeah, this is the first time they bombed or like stuff like that. And like even though it's reviewed correctly, it's like
Yeah.
how, and even then, like I'm very interested when the show's over, because how they marketed is we still saw a lot of the stuff in the real world. And I think that's a lot of people, if they were put off of, if they didn't listen to the show or if they didn't,
Hmm.
look into reviews, they maybe weren't maybe they're expecting snippets of the comedy world or like a mixture of them. But for the first 2 episodes to be purely black and white for the most part, it is something very different. And it's something that, like, sure, there's been Guardian of the Galaxy was a risk because you didn't know these characters. That's
Yeah.
why, right? But it's still, at the end of the day, it's a sci-fi space action, the MCU comedy. It's different because it's James Gunn comedy, so it's a bit more kind of wonky and out there and stuff like that. There's stuff that I feel Black Panther is a risk, but again, that was more because the casting, and like we don't have many black leads sets and stuff like this. This to me is a pure story-based risk as far as we're going to do something very different and off the wall. And it's tough because you and I talked about this off cast. I don't think we put in there, but Kevin Feige was like, oh, this is the perfect way to start phase 4. And I was like, to me, I was like, I don't know if it was because like obviously COVID happened, but I was like, Falcon Winter Soldier to me was better, or Black Widow, because that's more the norm for MCU. But maybe at the end of the day, if we see what happens, this is a good way to start because it shows, hey, we have your classic MCU stuff that you're going to like, your adventures, your superheroism, but Multiverse of Madness, Spider-Man 3, something that we don't know, Moon Knight could get really trippy, you know? We are going to get a bit more weirder, and we hope you're in for it. And like you said, this is the place to do it. This is because, again, if this were to fail, it's like, well, it's one and done if they want it to be, and we move on. And they hopefully don't lose a bunch of money. And people, I think, will subscribe to see this. I think they have. I'm excited to see more near the end of the month that they release like subs or stuff like that. We don't have that kind of instantly, but I'm excited to see what that impact is.
Yeah, and it's one of those ideas where, again, if we do have Falcon and the Winter Soldier as our next series, then Black Widow, when it comes out on whatever platform it's going to, it the big story of this new phase of the MCU is this. One of the big stories is this multiverse concept. So
yeah,
what a way to introduce this, even though in a couple of episodes, in just 2 episodes, we don't have that concept yet. As you said, you and I and others that listen are kind of in the know of that. But that's what I like about it, in the sense of I want to see where this end game goes, because we've had theories. We're going to have more theories just based on 2 episodes.
oh yeah, which
And
changes
just
daily.
yes,
You know?
with sometimes within an hour of our chat is like, did you see this? Did you think about this? Did
Yeah.
you see what this means?
You know that the cat is named this, and it's like, I didn't think about that, and it's just like, and that is the good thing as far as, because I saw Brent, and he posted a few days ago about like the binge model versus this model. Now the selfish part of me, of course, when the episode 2 ended, I did want to be like Netflix, where I could just get to the end, because I was enjoying it, right? I just want to know what is going on, what are these answers. But it has been fun to see this, and that we had that with The Boys recently, right? But it has been fun to have this weekly talking about, especially with this show. I think we're gonna have fun talking with Loki and Falcon Winter Soldier, but I think this one's particularly lends itself to what is happening, what's going on. And I think that will still grab people that might even think it's weird. They may come back to it and be like, okay, like I'm still interested in what is this happening. Like, to me, this is the type of show that's like an Inception, where you go and watch a YouTube video and it's like, here's the 5 theories of this or this, and here's the hidden meaning behind this. Like, and we talked about that in the previews already. The show has had just a copious amounts of Easter eggs. It reminds me very a lot like Spider-Verse, where it's just like almost on every time there's a new screen, it's like, I said this on Geekverse, like I'm sometimes too busy. Like, am I missing something? Is there something going on? And then it's like, no, that's just a regular watch. Oh no, that's the Hydra watch. And then it's just like, it is fun, and it warrants multiple rewatches. I've seen it 3 times as well, and it's great because there's stuff that I know. I went to internet, took a few days, and there's stuff like the Grim Reaper helmet in the credits. No idea, completely missed that.
Oh yeah, you will miss that, because again, they don't pan it, they don't pan slowly. You will have to pause at that point. But yeah, I mean, it's, I don't know. We could talk about each, we could just talk about the episodes in general, or if you want to do episode by episode, I don't know. What do you feel?
I think, maybe let's combine the episodes, because then if we kind of have 2 things to compare, we can go to. And I want to talk about something that you and I were talking about with Brent earlier, as far as certain people getting hurt in this show. And that's why I also tell this, because like, and I guess maybe my first question is, so we had seen the preview, we'd seen the speculation. As right now, week 1, 2 episodes, what is your kind of working theory of what exactly is going on? Obviously, like I said, this is going to change week to week, but what is your headspace of what is the situation happening in Westview?
My working theory, and this might be just, again, I've listened to you all on Geekverse, fans, other podcasts, kind of, and other streamings, like, give their takes at that point. So this maybe, I had my theories, and a lot of them either been confirmed or I give interesting theories. But I think my working theory, even before going into the show, my working theory was that Wanda was sent in. She's partly working with Sword, and something has happened where whatever is going on in this area of Westview, that she has now seen a way for her to make her perfect life. something is kind of manipulate. I would say when I say manipulating, I say like something about this pocket dimension
Hmm.
is is a lot like making her want to say, I want to have my perfect life at that point. And the only reason I kind of get a little more confirmed that is when you hear John Woo come through the radio saying, Wanda, who's doing this to you? Things like that. So they know she's in there. They know they're trying to find a way to reach her and reach out to her. And so I think, and I've always thought that she is the antagonist. She will become more of the antagonist of the show because I truly think this season ends in tragedy for her and
Hmm.
causes her break.
Okay, so I agree with most, or not that I disagree. I hadn't thought
Yeah.
of the her working with Sword and that got her into the situation, and that's like a good potential route to go down, because I had thought that she had gone off on her own, whether that is somebody manipulating or her just doing something and then
Hmm.
Sword getting wind of it. But like you said, they do know it's her and do know it's her, like, by name and everything like that. That could just be them figuring out. But that is a good working theory, because people have talked about too, of like, we're going to talk about today in Comic Club, but like White Vision, stuff like that. Like, is there a way that maybe she was still working with them to try and get Vision back? I don't know. But I'm similar to you, as far as the only thing is, as far as with Wanda, and definitely more taking an antagonist role, is I wonder if stuff like Randall Park's character, Agent Wu, saying like, who's doing this to you, blah, blah, I wonder if that's a red herring, as far as on the outside world they're looking in and they just assume, oh, Wanda couldn't do this, she wouldn't be doing this, even though she attacked the Avengers, all this stuff. You know how they are in in the MCU. Like, okay, we're friends now. I've just been wondering if this whole thing is Scarlett's doing, whether this is
Hmm.
what she wanted to do or she did accidentally and then just continued going forward. And there's a few points I'll bring up, but that's where I think they're trying to maybe mislead us, and that's where I think even Agnes, which we'll talk about, like, could be another red herring, as far as we all think we want to point the finger to somebody else, but then what's going to happen if you turn it and you have to point to Wanda? And it's very interesting that way. And I wanted to ask you, like, how do you, because we,
I definitely want to respond to what you
yeah.
said before you asked a question. Is that's the you're right with the other theory. Like I've been wrestling with that one I have, and then the one you have. Like which one's going to end up panning out? And I think it's going to be amalgam because I definitely can see her still being at her lowest of lowest points, losing vision, having no one. She's lost her brother, and we put that in
Mhm.
quotes now. Um, and, um, and not didn't lose her, he died. We didn't like I misplaced my brother.
Yeah, yeah.
But she could have just like again, this is her house of M in the sense of she has to create her own reality to find her happiness. So I definitely buy that. I think those are the two working theories that have the most plausible, or they're going to combine them, or it's going to be none of it.
Well, even then, Kevin Feige has brought up that we, the viewers, and Wanda don't even know how powerful she is yet. What if there's a
Correct.
chance that she accidentally created this, as far as she was just simply
Mhm.
like daydreaming a life up, right? She's
Yeah.
thinking about the shows that she watched as a kid in Sokovia, the American show. She thought about Vision. What if she was simply asleep or daydream something and then it happened? And that could be maybe the twist where it's like, okay, she didn't know she did that, but then once she figured it out, because the 2 points is, and I'll come back to that question after, as far as why I'm thinking, because you and I had debated this, and that's kind of the talk town, is like, is Wanda knowingly doing this or is it against her will situation? And that's the thing where there's the choking scene, and we were
Mhm.
talking about this with Brent. He showed a good image with us, and we'll talk about that a bit. But then there's also the biggest thing, and that's why I used this picture with the beekeeper. That to me was, in my opinion, that was the showing of the hand for me, to maybe people that aren't like us, that are more mainstream, like, oh, that's weird. To me, that was the showing of the hand of, I think she's more antagonist or villainous than we think. Do I think she's a
Yeah.
villainous going to take over the world? No, but I think it's going to be Civil War, or even the way that the X-Men sometimes have been looked at. Look at when we did House of X. Many characters did not agree with X-Men in that. They feel they might be dangerous, right? And it's this thing of, she's fighting for what she wants, her life, but indirectly she becomes a villain, quotation, for our characters. And when that beekeeper comes up and she just says no and she rewinds everything, to me that is her she's keeping this situation going. And that's where I think that it could be a Mandarin situation where we're all expecting, like, here comes this big villain, here comes Agnes, here comes Mephisto, here comes Nightmare. And then really it's not. And that's what I was going to ask you, because we've dealt with it in years in comic books, whether it's the 60s, 70s, DC and Marvel. Look at Hal Jordan. He eventually became a villain, right? And then he came back. How do you, because in the MCU, we've seen people be on different sides, like a Tony Stark, but eventually they always bow tie it and it's, right. How the general audience would kind of come to the idea of, if this series does end with her being a main antagonist, like let's say Doctor Strange, it is her versus each other. Maybe there's a way for her to come back, but if she's more villainous, how does the mainstream take that for kind of, I think, their first taste of that? Because that's never been a thing. And I think that'd be a great storyline to see a hero kind of maybe turn to the more villainous side. But I wonder how they're going to react to some character that we've invested in since 2015.
Well, it's an interesting thing because, some on a very quick glance say, well, she was kind of quote unquote villainous in Age of Ultron. I wouldn't necessarily say that, just because of the manipulation she was under and the obvious, in putting it lightly, the crime she was going after Tony Stark for, and what the Avengers represented to them at that point. So her completely turning, it's hard to call her a villain in the sense of, I keep using the antagonist, because she's a very tragic character since the beginning of her introduction into the MCU.
Yeah.
And she can never go, and again, just when she makes that hero moment with Hawkeye, her brother makes that hero moment, her brother is killed. Just when she gets happy, finds happiness with Vision is killed. And so she just, those who think, Wanda, you think you have it made, take one step forward. Not so fast, Wanda. It's she's trying to find a way in life to make sure nothing is taking away her happiness. And so that, and we get to, and I think we should get to it kind of now because we keep dancing around it, is, as Brent talked around in our chat this afternoon, saying, like, anytime someone is questioning her, like, the reality when it comes to either Mr. Hart saying, when'd you get married? Where'd you get married? Where are the children? Why? And then
speak up.
Yeah, speak up. And then you got, I think it was Dottie that was kind of calling out different things at that point.
Yeah.
That's when you see the reality start, like the I don't know, the curtain start lifting, be a peek behind the curtain of what's going on. They're starting to lose himself. And then you had
behind the
Gwendolyn,
fourth
Monica
wall.
Rambeau. Yeah, fourth wall. And then you had is it Gwendolyn? I think
it's Gwendolyn, something like that. Yeah.
But Monica Rambeau at that point, when she, can't remember her name, and then you see very subtly, again, you're gonna have to watch. You have to look for it. You're not gonna look for it if you're not looking, not knowing it. She touches her arm, and then I'm Gwendolyn. And so, or Gertrude, whatever it is. I know it started with a G, but
almost implanting that idea and personality into her head of, like, if from Wanda's perspective of, I don't know who this is, touches her, you're this person now in my world.
Yeah.
And that's where it's tough, because it's funny, we've been talking about this with the comic club with Vision and some of the choices. It's like, where is he on the side as far as antagonists and villains? The same thing that I asked you, though. It's like, if it comes to this point where she's hurting the world because she wants to live in her reality, we're getting closer to the less antagonist. Like, those lines are starting to be blurred, and that's why it's going to be a very interesting situation if it is revealed that she is just taking over a town, taking over people, and held them hostage. For them to spin that to the real world and be like, it's not like the Hulk where it's like he lost control. The public still demonized him, but they kind of more understand that because it's something Bruce Banner can't control. They can pitch it that Wanda can't control us, but I think there's going to be a clear point where, and I think there's already been, where it shows she might control us more than we think. And that's why I wonder if people are giving her the benefit of the doubt. And it's just going to be interesting that there is a fine line between antagonist and villain. Like you said, in Sokovia, Avengers, that did feel more of a, like, misguided character or a hero of her story, right? Where this one, I don't know if I can go with her taking over innocent people's lives. Like, I can go with her as far as character that's interesting, but I mean, like, on the hero side, if she just took over Dottie and this nice family and, like, put them in her reality, it's like, you're fine to make your fake reality with Vision, but if you kidnapped all these people just so you could live your life, which you deserve it, you did a lot of great things, but you can't do that. That's where we're getting into some like Thanos villain territory stuff. But that's what makes it very interesting, and that's because I think that gives her more layers than she's ever had in the MCU.
Yeah, and I kind of see that. It's just one of those things that I don't think it's going to, she's been heroic, but again, it's that tragedy. And I think that it's a more sympathetic quote unquote villain
Yes.
antagonist that we've had for a while. And people say, well, what about Zemo? Zemo's got a point, but we don't have enough background outside of what the very little we know. Okay, his family was killed in this end, but I mean, we didn't we didn't see enough to kind of we sympathize, but we saw more villain in Civil War than we did see before that. You know,
Well, yeah, and I think that was a good motivation, but it's kind of like the Wanda one where it's kind of not misguided, but like the Avengers, they killed the family accidentally though. It wasn't Tony didn't
yeah,
show up there and take them. Yeah, it wasn't even that careless. And it was also because the Hulk went mad, some stuff happened. And in the chat, Travis and Clay were talking about like the Wanda's powers and the levels of them. If you read comic books, Wanda is always one of the most powerful MCU characters of all time. This is the person that if you don't know, go read House of M. For anyone to cause that right away, you're in the top 10, top 5 potentially of powerful characters. So, and Feige's always talked about that. And I think we had seen glimpses of that, but like the very first time, and I think it's good as kind of leading was Endgame. Because before those rockets came down, Thanos was screwed. Thanos didn't even
yeah.
you look at like the whole trinity of Cap, Iron Man, and Tony did so much less damage than just a pissed off Wanda. And I think that was almost a great lead in to show like I love the whole back and forth, but she won that battle until there's other stuff she had to protect herself, stuff like that. But if it was just these two in a room, Thanos, even with the glove, was almost like standing no chance. And that shows us like, okay, this person is powerful. And so I think it could put a strain on our body, but that's kind of the thing where I don't think it is. I don't think, and that's going to show just how much more. And as a villain, that is very. I think that also this show, once people watch it, and the good thing is with Doctor Strange not being the next next year, hopefully, is they can, if she is a villain or an antagonist, they can really, this show will build her up to show her possibilities going into Doctor Strange, because they made Doctor Strange seem very powerful in the MCU so far. So if you have Wanda who can create a whole new world, do multiverse stuff, that right away shows, okay, she could go toe to toe with the Doctor easily.
Yeah, and it's setting itself up very much like that. So I mean, there's gonna be a switch, and I think one of the hints that we see of this is when we see it in the trailers when Vision starts questioning,
Yes,
what something's wrong. This is and I think that's whenever that scene happens, I think that's going to be a very pivotal moment, because the thing she's trying to hold on to the most is the one thing she loves the most, and that's Vision.
I think that's going to be, if you spoilers for Dexter, go watch it, and it doesn't even matter because this character's not involved. But that there's a moment in season 7 where Deborah, who's the sister of Dexter, finds out he could potentially be a serial killer. She questions him and everything, and he gives this whole story. It was one time thing, blah blah blah, and then she goes and tears apart his room and finds everything. I think this show's on that similar trajectory where Vision might start to question stuff, and our character Wanda, and even to us, may seem like, I don't know what you're talking about. Oh, that's weird. But then when he has that real conversation with her, that will be our defining moment, I think, of how much does she know? Because she'll either
And with that, how much does she want to keep Vision questioning at that point? Because we already saw at the end of the second episode, she says, no, we go back, and Vision's none the wiser necessarily about, he doesn't remember what just happened.
Exactly. So if she responds to that conversation saying, "Oh, you're right, this is weird. We got to figure this out," blah blah blah, or if she just responds with, "I wish you didn't. Like, I wish we're not having this conversation. I wish you didn't have to break reality and stuff like that." That's where it's going to be another indicator of, like, because to me that would be super dark if the last episode or two does reveal that it is just her. Like because like we've talked about like Evan Peters and Mephisto and Nightmare, but now there's been going back and forth. It's like, well, maybe it might actually be Quicksilver and Agatha, which is so funny because like I talk about this with Geek First because they have no idea. But the second, because we'd never heard her name, it was just the nosy neighbor. But the second she said Agnes, I'm like, okay, like this is like they are clearly like they're painting that picture for us, painting that picture for us fanboys to think that's her or to have an idea. Now, the two things about Agnes is it could just be her, and they're starting to lay those breadcrumbs. and we'll get there, and maybe she like found out this was Wanda was happening and she worked her way in because she has magic. Or it is, to me, I've thought about it could be another kind of manner and situation where all us are focused and think that it has to be her, and it could just be like, nah, it's not, because they don't have to do that. She doesn't have to be the villain. And that might be us thinking, us fanboys, to trick us like, oh, it's probably Agnes. She's probably the one doing this. But really, it's kind of like the magician. It's like glamour and illusion, making us look at one thing, but the other thing's actually happening. I wonder if Agnes is going to be used as like a red herring as well to say, oh, yeah, this is our big bad. This is the new character. But really, it's Wanda. Even unintentionally, it's Wanda. And like Agnes has so many, like we talked about, Brent Sense thing with this cat. There's been with that character so many Easter eggs of like referring to the devil's in the details. And that's where I wonder if it's laying on too thick. And that's where I've been starting to think maybe this is a red herring and she's not going to be as much as a villain or huge character that we think. I don't know.
Well, in the sense of, I could say, like, we're dropping the hints, like I think it was an old scratch and everything. Yes, that does mean the devil in many different sources. But if she is the witch, she has been around since the Salem witch trials. So witches in the sense of like controlled by the devil. So she could just be throwing that around. It would be interesting to see Mephisto. And we can get weird with the show, but I would sooner more buy Mephisto in Doctor Strange right now than WandaVision. Again, we can jump the shark on that one and be fine. Again, there is a history with Mephisto and Wanda that wouldn't be there, but we know that in the comics. We know that he's one of the ones responsible for leading towards House of M and her break with reality. But I'm a little bit not there yet, fully believing Mephisto is going to be in the show.
I'm not now, not even because that. I just because like I said, I have my working theory of I do think Wanda is the main antagonist. My thing is it's so funny because we saw this with Wonder Woman 1984, where even the mainstream, they can accept Thanos, this big purple alien, these gems, everything like that. But when you start getting a bit more fantasy, you do got to be a bit
biblical,
more careful.
Basically.
Yes, you do got to be a bit more careful because, like with Wonder Woman, that was a big thing of like I heard a lot of people like, oh, it's just wishes, but it's just like you literally watch Wonder Woman where she said she was made from a mold of clay, right? Like this, yeah. That's clearly, in my opinion, magic and like fantasy and stuff like that. But when it's so overt, and if you do introduce someone like Mephisto, who is Marvel's devil, that is a big. It's not a big leap because I feel like they're working their way up to it, but I think for some people it is still a big leap because it is meshing worlds and you go, okay, now there's like the devil in my Marvel stuff. And it's like, they put a stake in heaven and hell and stuff like that. So I agree with you. I think even the most you could still get hints at him or an end credit scene even then, but it is interesting because I heard people, we've talked about this before, but more people like bring up the Nightmare one. And to me, Nightmare makes a bit more sense as well, because you could have her in this reality and Nightmare's screwing with it too. And that to me, if she is, to me, like I know Mephisto has a history with House of M, with her children, everything like that, but it doesn't have to be. Hank Pym created Ultron. He didn't in the MCU, right? So you could easily take Mephisto and adopt it to Nightmare. And I think Nightmare would maybe be a bit more suitable and a bit more viable for the mainstream. But if they do Mephisto, other than Brent possibly having a heart attack, I'm excited to see it. I want them to do it right, but I want to ask you, because we talked about when we moved on. What do you think? Oh, go ahead. Yeah.
With that, Clay says, what if Mephisto is Agnes, and not necessarily playing Agnes Harkness, just Agnes Harkness. I could see it. Well, let me qualify too. Like, I'm not thinking that the audience is not ready to see Marvel's devil at that point. It's just, it's one of those things that's saying, this is the first kind of as weird show as Marvel's gotten. How far do they want to go in pushing that envelope right now?
Yes.
Again, we treat the audience like they can get it. I totally am saying that. Yes, they could totally buy it, but I'm just saying, are they ready to really push that envelope at this point and just kind of tease it out? And then, okay, this works. Okay, we can do a little bit further. We can get a little more weird at that point.
No, I agree with you, and that's a good point. And I think that's a good thing about the series being week to week is if you were to watch, I imagine the series all together, that weirdness might really strike people. But week to week, the more weird it gets, people will consume it a bit more easy and more the mainstream and whatnot. And yeah, Clay, I'd be down if she was Mephisto. That could be fun. She's I think we both echo this, that she's been great. She's been a standout,
Yeah.
just like Paul
She's
Bettany
a
and Elizabeth Olsen.
gas.
Oh yeah, she's fantastic in all this. And what I want to ask you next, because one thing about Agnes, I'm gonna not trip up, but like the only parts of me thinking that she is could still be real or a player in this is there's a few things, but I remember the first episode when they're doing the dinner gag and everything like that, and she comes to the front door and she sees Vision and she's like, "Oh, who is this?" And then the door gets closed. So it's just a very subtle like thing, but what do you think the deal is with Vision? Because I feel like that's been the other thing that's talked about. Like, is he completely made up? Is it a little part of him left? Is he fully rebuilt? What's the deal? Because I know some people said, "Oh, well, not much happened to him in this. He's still living this world." When he got rewound, like you said, he was none the wiser. I just think he has not caught up to it yet, and I think there is some form of being real, but he's going to eventually catch up. But where do you lie on the Vision kind of state?
Yeah, I mean they take a little. This gets into. I know we'll get probably ending our little discussion. We'll talk about the Easter eggs, that we saw. But one of them is the comment of "There's my husband with the indestructible head."
Mm-hmm.
That's definitely just a very clear reference to, well, he basically has most of his head taken out by
Yeah.
Thanos at that point. So, but then he goes to his job. He's like, what do we do here? What do we don't make, we don't do, we compute. So it's interesting because one could say like, okay, she made a, like, Vision isn't real. He's not really there. He's there. I don't buy that at this point because
Yeah.
again, this clearly sounds Vision has come back. He is not fully there. He doesn't she's been able to manipulate him to a point to kind of understand, but enough so that he doesn't question too much, but there's still an air of just, I'm not sure about a lot of things, and it's more of just chalking it up to, oh, we're just new here, and all this is, we're just getting used to this idea.
Well, and Brent, I think he's brought up to us on this show, but either way, check out Marvel Squadcast. Him and Brock reviewed this as well. And he talked about, like I said, he's referred to this in Wakanda when they were doing the kind of transfer that I agree that looked like Shuri maybe did like a save file when,
Mhm.
everything was going to hell. And what if this is a guy, what if this is a Vision that is like they picked up right when it was just them in the hotel having a good time, like talking about
Yeah,
love and stuff like that? What if he literally has no memory of even the idea of Thanos, of like the
yeah.
snap, the blip, and that's thing like he could literally be a Vision we know to like 2018 or something like that, because he might not be picking up on this. He might not pick up that he's died and stuff like that. And that's where it's interesting.
Well,
That's where I think,
especially when the comment we'd see said, "You're dead. Why are you? You're dead." When Agnes says that, in
yeah.
the trailer that we haven't gotten to that episode. It's probably definitely 2 or 3 episodes away.
Oh yeah, I think so. Yeah, and I think because there's that shot at one point of them in the room and they both get like blown back and they're black and white. I think there's going to be a point. I think that's the conversation when he's talking to her, and they're going to like flip through almost all the decades in their house when he's kind of figuring it all out. And that's where I want to ask you as far as like because you have the Easter eggs, but for episode 3, do you have any like big predictions or anything that you foreseen? Because obviously it seems like they're going to cover like the 70s, 80s sort of era in this
Yeah,
one.
well, I think that if episode counts are 9 at this point,
Yeah.
this week we're gonna get the 70s, 80s the next one, 90s, 2000. We're gonna
Hmm.
go all the, because they did say we're doing a take kind of a Modern Family kind of talking to the camera. So we're
Yeah.
gonna be 6 episodes all devoted to and then we got 3 left. That's where the present. I'm not saying we're gonna have to wait to present day for those last 3 episodes, but I think that that's where obviously that's where the present day stuff's really going to take hold. We're out of
Hmm.
that, but that's kind of my working theory. But with episode 3, from what I've read, I've really tried to stay away from a lot of stuff and I appreciate the bloggers not revealing too much, and that probably it's NDAs and everything like that. But the stuff that has gotten out there, this is supposed to be. There's a reason they put out 3 episodes to the bloggers
Yeah.
and the stuff, because they wanted to kind of make people say you're going to have to wait around just a little bit. And that's one reason why they also didn't do just 1 episode. They did 2 to kind of start hinting. Because if they just did 1 episode, I don't think that was enough of a hook
I
for
agree with you. Yeah.
so
Uh,
I think
Two
that
was a
we're
good amount.
and the key was the beekeeper. So that's your lost kind of moment with the black
Mhm.
cloud. If I remember my lost history a little bit, never watched the full thing, but watched 2 seasons, and that's where I
Yeah.
said, all right, I'm done. um, and so I think we're going to get it's going to be a little more revealed of inclusion. We're going to see more of Sword. I think we're going to see a little bit more of incursions of Sword into this world. I think
Mhm.
every time we've gotten a little bit more, like we saw the first episode, we saw watching. Now we've seen the beekeeper, who one could think is AIM, but it's Sword, or it's AIM posing as Sword at that point. Or is it just a
Mhm.
homage to AIM? I still think it's Sword at that point. Um,
Yeah,
but
because you don't want to you don't want to recopy the Hydra and the Shield with AIM into Sword.
yeah,
Because I've heard a lot of people pitch that, like, well, yeah, but AIM could be working their way into. I don't want that because that's just way too similar to what we just had. And you would hope that if Sword is the new Shield, that would be day one. Like, we got to make sure that never happens again. So if we go with the storyline of AIM is secretly behind all this, that would feel a little kind
yeah,
of a little copy and paste
it's
in
not
my opinion.
earned. It's
No,
not
it's
earned in
it's
this,
not.
and
No. And like I said, it would just feel like jumping ahead to it. Like, yeah, Aim's here and there. It's just like I think it might just be a fun homage, or it's just us that like they literally had a beekeeper costume, like, oh yeah, this could be fun. And it was not even anything intended.
I don't want to go that far. That's not intended. They a lot of things are pretty planned out in that sense when it comes to that.
It is, but I just always remember because it was a couple months ago when Zack Snyder was on the vodka stream, and they were someone asked him a question of like, so you purposely did like the Henry Cavill, Christopher Reeve face thing? He's like, no, that was just a happy accident, and that's why you could.
Yeah, I
I
mean
think you're
there
100
are.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're 100% right, but it's just also because I know the beekeepers aim, they have history, but just that look of the beekeeper to me felt very even 60s too, like in a comedy, like it feels like this would fit in this world. So it's just it's gonna be interesting to see, but I don't
But
want that. Like I said, I don't want the aim secretly
well,
infiltrating. Don't want that.
true. Well, my thing is we'll either get one of these, both of these. We'll get a little bit more sword incursions into this world, or we get our first look at present day, what's going on in the outside. Even if it's like the end of the episode, we get the push out. Because remember, I'd have to go back and look at the trailer. This might be the episode we see Monica get thrown out.
That was where I was going with it.
Yeah,
So I'm completely on that bandwagon where I think the episode will end with her getting thrown out because in the second trailer, she also has that moment of she comes and she's like, oh, Wanda. And then Scarlet goes, who are you? And then she goes, I don't know. So this shows that maybe there have been separated something. Maybe whatever spell that Scarlet put on her has weared off. And then that's where I think, because to me, if you look as well, there's still baby bumps. So I could see this almost being like a baby shower episode or something like that, like celebrating, like, oh,
yeah,
they're so. And then throughout that party, I could see Monica slipping or coming back to reality. And maybe she even tries to go talk to Vision, or maybe she's the first person that puts little ideas to Vision, like something's not right here. She picks it up, throws her out, and I do think that's gonna be how the episode ends, or near the end. We'll get our first look at the real world with Monica again, especially because I'm pretty sure I'm like you. I have to look back, but I think the hairstyles between her getting thrown out and her at this like, "Hey Wanda, what's going on?" They're similar hairstyles, so to me that would read the
yeah.
same episode. So I think we are gonna get that, and I think that's gonna be your first like. And especially too in my working theory, if she is a villain, to me the other things have been like, okay, she's just going back. If Wanda physically throws someone out of this universe, and I don't say it has to be violent, but if she literally takes them and throws them out, right there, it's like, okay, well, is on a bad path. Like whether she's hypnotized, whether she's doing this willingly, she's doing villainous things again. So, and I think that would be a big beat, and I think that would be really good because eventually I think that'll be the trajectory of Vision will start to figure out. But I still think we have a few more episodes. But I think he's going to start seeing some signs to be like, okay, not everything is right. And I do wonder if it's kind of. Have you ever seen About Time, Chris?
No, that doesn't ring a bell. No.
So it's a movie about time travel, and there's this one little rule of when you have a child, if you go back, you can't go back after your child's born, or they might change gender.
Oh,
Things
wait a
might
minute.
change.
Who's in this movie?
Domhnall Gleeson, Rachel McAdams, Bill
Maybe,
Nighy. If not, watch it with your wife. It's
maybe.
a great movie. If watch it,
She
and then
she she has watched this because as you're explaining to me, she said, "Man, I've heard of this movie
cheap
before."
plug. That was my debut on I Love That Movie. I picked that one with Lisa, and it was her first time. And she was like, I don't know what rom coms, and she loved it. So it's a great movie. But one of the rules was you can't go back once you have a kid. You can go back, but it might mess up everything. And I do wonder. if that could happen, where once those kids are born, Wanda can fix things, but only like she couldn't rewind like she did with Vision. And maybe that's how, because I was thinking, how does he start to figure stuff out if she can just kind of hit the reset button? I wonder if those kids in her mind, once they're born, if that loses a little bit of the reset button and he starts to build up. Because, like you said from the trailer, he does start questioning things at some point. So there has to be some reason why he starts to retain this information, or it's just enough of he eventually realizes, yeah, I'm being played with here. Like something's going on here. And I'm very excited for episode 3.
Yeah, I mean, I think out of the two, my favorite was episode 2.
Mm-hmm.
Again, I enjoyed, the the kind of Vision kind of going on his own, the gumming up of his gumming up of his system at that point, being the drunken, the idea of him basically revealing his powers to everyone. I think those are my favorite scenes, the magic scene, and then Wanda with Dottie in the group.
Mm-hmm.
That was very, those are my favorite scenes of it, and that was definitely my favorite episode.
And I do have to say, I pitched this to you guys, but then I listened to SES and I heard Hines said the same thing. I do think a way that Monica got in there, or somehow that helicopter, with that being the big mystery, I do think some pin particles are
Mm-hmm.
responsible for that, because I don't know why they throw. You could, if it was a toy helicopter, then I'd say, oh, maybe they're just doing tests to see what can get through. The fact that it had a logo on it to me shows that maybe they shrunk Monica
Yeah.
down. She got in there, and then when she got back, she made herself normal size, but then when she got there, she maybe didn't have an idea what's going on. I think that's the helicopter. I thought that the day after, and I wish I mentioned that, Geek, first I didn't, but I was like, oh, you know what? Why is it small? That's why it's small. And
Yeah.
I especially after, because we're talking about this Brent, I just feel like after Endgame, Pym is very recluse. He doesn't want to talk to government, Stark, things like that. But if he were to learn, like, hey, without these particles, we couldn't have brought any of you back, he might have been like, you know what? Maybe it is time to kind of get these in like other people's hands, because if they didn't have those particles, they couldn't have got the stones, anything like that. So I'm sure they would sit him down and be like, Hank, like, we know you don't like this, but you could help save lives. You could help save people if you were to give this away. And I think with his wife back, with just even getting them all back from the snap or the blip, that would turn around and be like, you can start using my stuff. So you don't got to go back in the 60s and steal it from my younger self ever again.
Yeah, it's I like that, just because it seems just random to
Yeah.
see, a small little plane right there. I mean, yes, in Tony Stark colors. I think that's
Mm-hmm.
that's also just kind of interesting that they have those colors. I don't know. What do you think about that?
Yeah, because some people brought that up as like, is that the reason she keeps seeing red? And because it reminds her of Iron Man? I don't think so. I think that's more just a tie to her and Vision. But I wonder if Sword's colors or whatnot in the MCU could be almost Iron Man inspired, right? Because he's such a big deal and he gave his life and all that stuff and everything. So I could see that, but or it's just maybe that's what she's projecting. I don't know. That's the same thing. We haven't gotten the official, like, why does she see certain colors yet? With Dottie was the blood. We covered that a little bit, but it's just one of those another little mysteries that I'm sure we'll learn about, but I'm excited to learn about it.
Yeah. So, do you want to talk about some Easter eggs?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. Um, the calendar has a couple of nods when they see in episode 1. The heart over 23, two Easter eggs on this one. There are 23 films in the MCU.
Mm,
And this also references Avengers number 238, where Vision is reactivated after an early adventure where he's been deactivated after passing through a magical field.
that's very cool.
Um, let's see, the commercials were cool, but the
Yeah.
Stark toaster, very sinister callback to the Sokovia, the
Yeah.
Stark bomb at that point. I mean, the dinging right there, and you see kind of the look of the woman's like, is this
Oh,
gonna
I
blow
know.
up?
Yeah.
So that was cool. Their traditional Sokovia greeting, that is a very subtle reference to kind of Wanda sneaking up behind Tony
Mm-hmm.
when in Ultron at that point. So that's a little callback to that. We've already talked about the House of M on the wine bottle. The pixel effects of end credits, that is a callback to House of M. That is a callback to how she's kind of like restructuring reality.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, I guess I didn't even put those two and two together, so that's why I like this rundown. So yeah, I guess you're right. I gotta reread House of. It's been it's been not a long time, but I think it's been almost maybe since 2015, because I remember I did a stretch of reading a bunch of stuff again when she was coming in the MCU, her and her brother. But it's due for reread in my
Hey,
book.
check out World's Finest.
Oh, there you
If
go. Yeah.
House of M. But yeah, I think that's one of those kind of like I think more so with House of M. I think reading also the tie-ins really helps flesh out that world even
Yeah.
more than that. With episode 2, you already brought up the Grim Reaper and the floorboards. At that point, you also see the idea the vase that has a W. That's a callback to the Wizard.
Mhm.
A like character at that point. If you're a fan of Jessica Jones, that's
He's
characters in there.
he's in a comic book club coming up later today. He's not much of a
He-
role, but he is at a dinner.
oh yeah, he
Yeah.
is at that point. The shopping scene has a bunch of stuff. There's a reference to Bova milk. Bova is Wanda's
Mhm.
nursemaid, who was actually a mutated cow transformed by insane scientists named the High Evolutionary.
Yeah.
There is Auntie A's kitty litter, Agatha Harkness, who also Auntie Agatha, who helped raise not only the twins also, but also Mr. Fantastic son Franklin, and also has a cat named Ebony.
Mhm.
Let's see what anything else that was big.
Did you mention the Sokovia prison on the wall yet? That one
Yep,
too.
the Sokovia prison. That was very subtle. You got the Strucker watch, Baron von Strucker, who
Mhm.
unlocked the miracle of the twins with
Yeah.
The Mind Stone. It was a Mind Stone, if I'm not
It
mistaken.
was the Mind Stone. Yeah, the
Yep.
enhanced. That
Enhanced. Yes, this is the lair of the miracles.
Yeah, it might be mutated now.
Yeah, I mean, this is a show again. I like picking up all these different things. I remember I read something about like the Emma Caulfield who plays Dottie. I remember her from Buffy, and some people have picked up on the joke of how much that character hated rabbits.
Yeah.
So bunnies aren't just cute like everyone supposes, and she played a demon in the show.
Mhm.
They got them happy legs and twitchy little noses, so it was kind of interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, well, let us know in the comments or on Twitter or whatnot, any theories that we missed or any things you want to talk about in the future, or like we said, any predictions you have for episode 3. And yeah, I'll be excited to see what we get to talk about next week. That's a good thing. One, we're always gonna have something to talk about the MCU, but it feels like every week we're always gonna have something very new to talk about with this one. Yeah, we're back, and I feel like this show's gonna give us something very much to talk about every time. So let us know what you think about it, but it's exciting.
Yeah, so you want to take our ad break before we head to some news?
Yeah, it's and we got some big news too. So it's
oof.
been a big week. So yes, ladies and gentlemen, just like Patreon, this helps grow the channel, this helps support it. Sometimes it might be a little loud, kind of depends on the podcatcher. And yeah, we'll be back in just a few moments with some news after this. And we're back talking about somebody else that might be back,
Yeah, so this was probably, we've had some shocking drops from news at that point. We thought the Deadpool news was shocking last week at this point. I still think Deadpool still trumps this story, but still I think it's on the same level of, well, I didn't see that one necessarily coming this soon. Deadline broke the story end of last week that Captain America eyes return to the MCU as Chris Evans nears a deal to reprise role in future Marvel projects. Deadline says that they shared a report that is expected to reprise his role in the MCU in some form. Details about the actor's return are still vague, but the outlet pointed out that Evans will return as Steve Rogers in at least one Marvel property with the door open for a second film. They said it's unlikely to be a new Captain America installment, so a solo film, and more likely to be what Robert Downey Jr. did after Iron Man 3 in the sense of appearing in Civil War, Spider-Man Homecoming. After the news report, Chris Evans was very cheeky and just simply tweeted out news to me. And what do we all think he's talking about? Everyone's like, I may not be talking about that. And he also later on, as we put out some emojis, including GIFs, including myself, said, so you wanted to just detract people and with the Captain America from Homecoming to sitting down, is saying he did respond to some of the responses are priceless. Good work, everyone. So
yeah, this is much like WandaVision, where there's like 8 ways people have been pitching like how this can happen, and it's been fun. And and that's one thing I'll say. Like I know he said the tweet like the news to me that is like the perfect denial, because it's him denying it in the
Yeah.
moment, but because I know Katie brought that up, like, oh, stars don't usually do this. One, they usually do, and I get what she was saying as far as it was just a tweet, but to me, it was the way of, hey, deny it, but don't deny it, because he can in the future be like, oh, it was just about something else. In the same way, because he didn't. If he were to quote tweet, I would have believed it, not believed it, but I would question it a bit more if he had quote tweeted the article and
Which he
then said
didn't.
that.
Yeah.
He didn't. Yeah. And I thought, okay, that is kind of a bit more of a dumb donkey, because we've seen Gunn do that. We've seen other people say they take the article, nope, this isn't real, or blah, blah, blah. To me, him just tweeting news to me, because even if you don't know about Captain America, you have no idea what he's referring to. So I think that's the perfect like non-denial as far as like a wink, because I do. However, he's brought back. I want to hear you.
And have actually taken time to follow up,
Yes.
with that idea that he's active on Twitter, but not hugely. But him tweeting something out, like, it's not, oh my gosh, he doesn't tweet ever. No, he's more active for his organization and
Yeah. He has a
politically
huge
at that
following.
point. Yeah, so him tweeting something out is not necessarily surprising.
And I think that no matter how, and I'm going to ask your opinion next on what you feel, but I think no matter how he comes back, I don't think it's going to be an advertised appearance for the first one. I think that it's going to be an end credit stinger or a big twist. It's not going to be revealed, because, like, you could, maybe we've talked about this before, like with Toby and Andrew. Do you show it? Do you promote it? But I think for story purposes, they are going to save that. And then I believe it's more than one movie. I don't think he's just coming back for one. So I feel like the reveal of him will be secret, but then the next movie, they'll have all the time in the world to promote that he's in this next movie, whatever the role is. So where do you feel that, how do you feel Steve Rogers fits into the phase 4, phase 5, phase 6,
Um, it's kind of like you and I have talked about with Robert Downey Jr. We both feel that it's not a question of if, it's a question of when.
Yes.
Um, and I could already hear there will death mean nothing. I didn't say necessarily in the same form. I just said Robert Downey reprising the role of Tony Stark, but I
Mhm.
didn't say in what capacity. Um, the same reason for Robert Downey to come back is the same reason that Chris Evans comes back. One could say money. Chris Evans is okay. I don't think he's necessarily starving to get back into the role. He was very happy and has gone on record of how he got to end the character in his way. He was very proud of them. I saw another one today of how awesome it was to have that end game moment
Mhm.
with the taking up the Mjolnir at that point, and just having Avengers. I mean, those are just so many amazing moments at that point. He had nothing left to prove.
Yeah.
So they had to bring him a story, a concept, an idea that they want to do that was enough to bring him back. And so that's where all the theories, like, what is the more interesting way to do it? Because is it interesting just to him come back as Captain America we all know and love, and do that? I said, it's great to have him back, but that's not interesting. I don't think that'll bring him back. So I've heard the idea of, the possibility of Secret Empire, Hail Hydra. Yeah, I've heard the idea of if it's a multiverse version of evil Cap. I just, we could see him do the old soldier when he loses his super soldier, he gets that taken away from him and becomes kind of the director of Shield and of operations at that point. That could be interesting. There has to be something interesting to going back, because Chris Evans doesn't need to come back to Captain America. There's no reason for him to want to do it, especially this soon. I don't see him. Again, it doesn't take much for a cameo. I don't
Yeah.
see him in Falcon and Winter Soldier. I
No.
do not see him, because I think that would be completely out of place outside of a cameo to refer back to Cap. But I don't think that would bring him back to do something like that and make a big deal about it. So it's one of those things that I could see this possibly in Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness. That's probably the earliest I would see, but I do
Mhm.
see this as possibly coming in a phase 5.
Yeah, I think you and I are in pretty much agreement with all that as far as the role. I don't think he's just going to come back to be your Steve Rogers again. If it was a little bit further down the line, and I know people say, oh, by the time they film this, it's going to be this. I get that, but I still feel like even just to be in talks for like, oh, you're going to come back for this big crossover, like I've pitched before, like, oh, we need Cap, put him through the time machine.
Yeah, I
Like,
mean that's also not a bad, idea either.
It's not. I just think that is too soon. To me, that is like I that hero like Cap back. I don't want that after a few like because COVID, it's changed, but it's just like I feel like that's more warranted a little bit down the line. I think it's something that would interest him. I don't I don't think, especially if Nick Fury wasn't around, I'd say okay, maybe it's that shield thing. And even then, if he does go away, they should really give that to Maria Hill so she finally has something to do in these movies. You know, like
Yeah.
don't give it to Steve Ross, don't give it to Chris Evans and old man makeup. Like give her to Colby Smulders, like give her a chance to shine, you know. And it's just, you know, Marvel, she's probably cheaper too because Chris Evans is a huge star. So I think either way,
Oh yeah, they're definitely paying him a lot.
oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, either way, and I've pitched this before. I think it's good. I think I love the idea of, you know, Reverse Flash, Negative Scott, like stuff like the hero and then the villain version. That's like the identical thing. Whether that's a Skrull, whether it's that Secret Empire, whether it's a multiverse, it's just he's the evil Captain America. I think it's gonna happen, and I've said this before that when we were talking weeks ago about the different chunks of the MCU, like the space, the time, the Earthbound. We were talking about like I always had trouble like how do I figure in these Earthbound people because I was like okay Loki connects them but Earthbound I could never get them together. If there is an evil version of Captain America, to me, like look at that Hawkeye, Falcon, Bucky, Hulk, they're already tied to that character. So they would be personally invested to stop this evil Cap, find out what's going on.
or
And to
or
me,
Skrull Cap. Yeah.
exactly. They see evil Captain America, Skrull Cap, whoever it is, they go, this isn't Captain America. Or if it is, I need to find out what went wrong. So that's how I feel that can get in our Earthbound characters. And I'm excited because I trust the MCU. I trust them wholeheartedly. This week was a reminder of that with WandaVision because I just think they knocked it out of the park even more than I was expecting. So I trust them not to just bring him back and just be, oh, he's here and he's a hero now. But I'm excited nonetheless, and it's gonna be interesting where he does pop up first.
Yeah, I mean, it seems, the possibility of maybe adapting Secret Empire may be the
Mhm.
most fascinating thing for Chris Evans. Like, yeah, what if somehow Cap's history got altered?
Yeah.
And he's been again, he kind of hinted towards that in Endgame in the sense when he might have been funny at that point because he knew the history. But Marvel's also good about dropping hints about that and saying, let's run with this idea. Let's see, let's what if that happened?
Mhm.
What would that be? What would that do to and you saw what it did to the psyche of everyone in the world when that issue dropped
Oh
when
yeah.
he said that. So I mean, yeah, it was
I
a
hated
callback.
it.
Oh, everyone did. Everyone
Yeah,
did.
yeah.
It was just like, oh my gosh, this is one heck of a retcon. What does this do to everything? And no, without ruining the story at that point, because I think it's rather fascinating tale. It's definitely not one. It's not one of my top tier stories, but it's just
Mhm.
interesting to see where they took it. It's got a lot of easy ways out of it to explain.
Yeah. Yeah, and I
But
liked what they ended up doing there. It was just always sometimes it felt like the initial the push for it was sometimes for me just like shock value for the sake of it.
I definitely don't think they stuck the landing. I think it was a very
Yes.
cheap way out that they found a way out of it because it
Yeah.
just seemed like, that really? Okay, I get it. But yeah, no.
And that's a good thing whether you adapt the best of stories or the worst of stories, Marvel can look at it and go, okay, they did this. How could we do that? You know, and it could be interesting to see what does Captain America, this huge symbol, do as far as a turnaround. And that's where with the scroll thing, I know people have brought up. To me, I don't think it's going to be a scroll because I feel like if he is a
Not
foe,
interesting enough to me.
I agree with that, and I think it'd be more interesting if he hadn't gone done his Peggy ending, and if they like
Yeah.
kidnapped him and he has got somewhere else. I think for me also it's just like it's a lame thing to think, but it's just as simple as the power set. I've brought this up before: is you want an evil Captain America, so he has super soldier serum, the strength, the speed, everything that Captain America.
Yeah.
And I know Skrulls are a bit more powerful than the average human. I get that, but they're not Captain America level. So you don't like you. To me, that's
Super
another reason.
super scrolls have that ability to do that.
That's true. They could do the super scroll route. They have all those rights now, so you are right there. And it's just that I agree with you. This might be less interesting, and also if you make him from a multiverse, whether it's just evil or Secret Empire, you give him a backstory of I was Captain America. One of actually it might be the best crossover the CW ever did was Crisis on Earth X, right?
Yeah.
But then
I agree. I think it was the better one.
fantastic with Evil Kara and Evil Steven, even Stephen Amell, Evil Green Arrow. Like that one probably was my favorite. One, it was just paced very well, but two, it was good because yes, they were villains, but they also gave a backstory of how they ended up here and why they were like that way. Obviously, it was bad, not for right reason, and you can do that with Cap, but I think that's the way to go. And I'll be interested to see what they do, of course, because it's I love Steve Rogers, I love Captain America, I love Chris Evans. So sign me up for whatever they're doing. I do trust them. They've earned my trust after all these 23 movies. For me to go, okay,
And,
show me what you got.
and again, going back to what we said earlier, I don't think Deadline would make this as big of a deal if their sources weren't saying if it was a cameo, it would be a story, but they would be very clear in the sense of, oh, this is a cameo, this is something else. Like with the stories we've seen about the Spider-Man 3 now called Home for the Holidays at that point, that's just the way it's going at this point.
Yeah.
um the it just says like they said this is for a significant role in something. Just they're calling out we're not getting Captain America 4
Yeah.
or 3 or wherever we're calling it now.
Yeah. They just
Can't count numbers are tough for me right now.
yeah, and I think they were smart to cite as it's a similar to the Downey Phase 3 deal, and at back half of Phase 2 as far as he'll be appearing, but not Captain America 4 and stuff like that. And it's gonna be interesting. Maybe next year that Disney investors call, that's when we get the confirmation because they're
Yeah.
not going to confirm it before that.
Yeah, I think like I said, it'll be interesting to see if we get something more this year from it. It'd be interesting.
I don't think so. With
Yeah, I don't either.
yeah, because all the stuff we would have seen by now, and I do think that this deal takes place and it would have happened after. So I don't think this year. I think talks about it maybe, but in actual content, I don't think so. Unless there was like and I agree with you, but unless they just like really quickly take someone on a Falcon Winter Soldier,
how-
which I don't think is needed.
How about this? If we're talking multiverse at this point, he could, like I said before, he could easily be in Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness. What if whatever Steven fixes about this? Because in my theory, this is the culmination of Wanda starts it, Spider-Man 3, the mess really opens up
Yeah,
globally.
you see the effects of it.
And then Doctor Strange has to fix everything and put it back. What if he's one of the ones that doesn't get put back?
That I have that idea too, where it's
Yeah.
like the reverse portal instead of your best buddies coming through. It's the worst.
Well, like he
nightmare.
just like he puts back and somehow he doesn't get put back.
Slips through the cracks or something
Yeah.
like that. Well, and I imagine if Doctor Strange is trying to close multiple multiverses that are mad, there's going to be a lot going on for him. So I could see something easily slipping out of the crack, and even then, there could be multiple things that slip in the crack of like, oh, I fixed it, I got together, but there's a slew of things, and there's these people called mutants. They're walking around now, like I could see evil Steve Rogers because like I also don't think like another hero version of Steve Rogers is interesting at all either. Like I feel like if it's a multiverse version, and I also just feel like Chris Evans would. That's why I would always pitched him and Downey to come back as villains. I don't know if they will because if they do this way, it might be too similar in the future if they do it. But I just feel like they would have fun at that role. It's something you get to play that character in a sense, but it's something new and different. Everyone loved him in Knives Out where he got to take that turn. Like people forget before Captain America, Evans played a lot of douchey roles.
Up your A.
Yeah, he played a lot of douchey roles. So now after Captain America, be like, look at him, he's playing a jerk. This is new. It's not that much new. He can do it really well. So and plus, then you can get an ultimate Sam like facing down like evil. It's like it'll be his Winter Soldier moment of him having to face down Winter Soldier on the airplane or the helicraft. Vice versa, where Falcon will have to take down this Captain America, and that's almost like the crowning of you are the new Captain America, or one of those moments.
So we'll have to see. More interesting news that we never saw coming this early. So, but yeah, we've got the next two are kind of back to back kind of combos at this point. Again, this is also rumor coming from Fandom Wire, both
lower tier, not Deadline.
Yeah, Deadline at that point, but they do deem these exclusives. So, and Travis and I stand on Black Panther 2 rumors, but now that this did pick up a little steam, so we want to at least acknowledge it. And some of these ideas definitely had something that you and I have talked about pre Chadwick Boseman passing away as well, in different ways. So they kind of reveal the plot. At least their sources are revealing the plot in the sense that there will be obviously scenes of T'Challa passing away, some kind of like symbolic. You're not going to have like him running around. You have probably someone in the suit or something like funeral or showcasing how T'Challa was killed at that point. We've learned that Shuri will become the next Black Panther, something that has been very much theorized many times. Deep sea Wakanda divers will uncover the city of Atlantis. Black Panther 2 will feature the war of the two hidden societies, Wakanda versus Atlantis, prompting the introduction of the Submariner Namor, which you and I have talked about as going on before. Big portion of the film will be underwater, so the war at that point, and the man behind the scenes pulling the strings is Doctor Doom.
Yeah, I can't wait
Which they talked about, I think, last week as well.
Yeah, we covered that too. Yeah, it's gonna be, and we had talked about that too. Where I feel like I know people are gonna compare and bite its head off, but I think it is gonna be a similar to a BVS situation where Namor and Black Panther are your Batman and Superman, and Doom is your Luther in the background, pulling some strings and whatnot. And
there is a lot of history behind that. Not only the war between Atlantis and Wakanda, so they're not necessarily trying to force this issue.
Yeah, and this is going to be a much grander scale. Like, I know people say grand scale Batman, like that's grand scale, but it was like pretty much two dudes and some other people, right? Where this is like two countries. This is like a country war that's going to happen, right?
Well, let's analyze that a little bit. I'll let a little bit more of my love of that movie come out, but in the idea of icon versus icon,
Yeah, no, I'm not talking.
I'm not lessening Black Panther being an icon. I'm just saying when it comes down to interesting. No one knows who Namor is. So that where, Black Panther is huge, but Namor is one of those things that it's not as huge in mainstream at all.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, in the scope of the film, like what they're fighting for, as far as no, Batman and Superman are your top 5 iconics. I just mean as far as like, yes, okay, Doomsday comes in, it leads to some stuff, and Darkseid is coming, but in that actual battle, it's two guys with a problem, right? Where this is going to be like two countries with a problem. So no, Batman and Superman very much more iconic than those two. But as far as this is going to be a different slant, as far as those two have personal issues, issues have to do with the safety of a city. Multiple cities. This is literally a country versus country. It's a world, like not a world war, but it could lead to a world war. People picking sides and whatnot. And I like that. It's very interesting. And I all I say is one. You and I have talked about this. Whether there's been little rumors like this in the past, or you and I have theorized this. To me, it just seemed before Chadwick was in regression, and now with him past with stuff like Shuri and like a battle for the crown, that seems like a natural progression. We talked about that. I don't think you can just write him off as like he was lost in Avengers. I think you do have to, kind of let the audience mourn with the movie. I think it will be cathartic for the cast. I all I do with this is I wish Ryan Coogler the best, and I will. Some people don't. You don't have to. I will give him very much the benefit of the doubt. And when I see this movie, review it on a slant. I did the same thing with Dark Knight Rises. I did the same thing with Rise of Skywalker. For the most part, JJ, you didn't have to copy the whole fucking Return of the Jedi, but that's another podcast. But like when Carrie passed, when Heath passed, both those movies to big divergence, right? And it was like Nolan's like, okay,
Last Jedi took a lot. Not Last Jedi, but Rise of Skywalker had a lot of different divergences than just Carrie Fisher.
Oh yeah, exactly. But that was one of his biggest ones right off the bat, right? As far as here's the script, and right away, even before JJ stuff, it's like this happens. Like, okay, this character clearly was supposed. They've always said was good. 9 was gonna be her film. So it's like when you lose the character that was gonna be her film, it's like. So that's the same way as this. Like, I'm going to say that I just hope they do the best with whatever they can. And all these pieces sound great. Shuri sounds great. Doom sounds great. The War of Atlantis and Wakanda sounds great. I'm excited to see who they get for Namor, because I know there was that guy cast a few months ago, but then like I brought up, he's not, as far as I saw, and I didn't look into it. So you correct me if I'm wrong. I don't think he was of Asian descent. And I think
he was his show. He's been in Narcos at that point.
Yeah. So, and I don't think we've kind of seen with Moon Knight and stuff that they'll still try and get people. I don't think they want to change people's origin, their nationality. So who knows, maybe that guy, maybe our Dr. Doom's already been cast and it's that guy, and he's just very like under the radar, right? Because that's a good thing with Doom, is like you could go get a big actor, but the character is so kind of special. Like Tom Hiddleston was a nobody before Loki, and then now he's somebody. So it's like you don't have to get somebody that
is more let's not go that far. He was more mainstream known at that point.
Who, Tom Hiddleston?
Tom Hiddleston. Yeah.
When he was casting Thor, though,
I think he had a lot. Again, he had a lot more play in England and BBC and British television, and
Yeah, but maybe you can make the case for this guy. Maybe in Spanish television, he has a lot of play
but
there, right?
that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Like, I don't want to say he's completely an unknown at that point.
Yeah, I just mean that when Tom Hiddleston and Chris Hemsworth were cast, you had to do the IMDb search, be like, okay, what have they
Correct.
been in?
Yes.
That's the
Okay.
same thing as this
Yeah.
guy, right? And it's different though. The MCU now they have a pocketbook to just like get anybody they want. If they really wanted to, they could go pay Leo $2 billion and like, okay, I'll be Doctor Doom. That's fine. Just give it to my organization. So maybe he is, but
Yeah.
if that guy isn't Doom or Namor, that's gonna be a fun point is the casting. But I'm still, like I said months ago, I am trying to get excited. I'm excited to see Namor. I'm very excited to see Doom. I'm still not at that point yet though, where I am like, even with those castings, I'm not. It'll take some really good trailers. I'm still in the sense of like I still would have even waited a little bit longer with this movie, but then there's points people bring up. It's an important movie, so I get that. It's just still tough for me to like. I haven't fully processed. Like, yeah, like it's not going to be Chadwick's movie, and that story is ended unfortunately. And just I'm excited, but I'm not fully there yet.
Yeah, no, yeah, I'm with you on that. This next story also coming from FanDewire, they basically dropped this story, and then this later one came later that night. They kind of promoted this. They were going to be one more thing with Black Panther, and they have also deemed an exclusive that they have learned. Their sources say that Michael B. Jordan will be returning to the role of Killmonger. They can't yet reveal how he will return, but definitely multiple ways. I don't
Oh
think
yeah.
if this is true, one, I think Killmonger has been my top villain, and I would villain slash antagonist in the MCU thus far.
Mhm.
And his story was just so very well done, very well depicted. Um, this is going to be very interesting in the sense of how he does come back, his role. Are we looking at a redemption story? Are we bringing a little bit of the multiverse into Black Panther? I'm not as much buying that. I think that's
Yeah.
kind of a stretch with how this move with Black Panther, what that movie and what it's, but what Ryan Coogler has said is this story is going to look at more deeper into the Wakandan society and looking at Wakanda itself. And I just don't see the multiverse angle fitting in necessarily, but it could be. But I think that somehow Wakanda being an advanced society, I know Killmonger had said, I just want to, let me die. You're not going to put me in a prison, this, that, and the other. They're also wanting to possibly redeem him
Yeah.
and give him a chance.
Well, I agree with you wholeheartedly because on Geek First after the Infinity Saga was ended, we did like a whole ranking and we did our top 10 characters of it and villains. And I know Thanos was all the rage and I love Loki, but Killmonger is still my number one villain. Even just that one film, he had such an impact. And I'd have to look
And
at it.
Michael B. Jordan, just the gravitas he brings to that, it's
Yeah.
he became that character.
Yeah, and that's what I have to bring up. It's tough because there's lots of people that get multiple performances, but if I have to name you just one single performance in the MCU, I usually go to that as my top, probably my top one or two, but I think it's my one. I think it's one that honestly should have got nominated for Academy Award that year and possibly even won it. He was fantastic. So him coming back does get me excited. I want to see how it's done because, like you said, that people brought that too. Like maybe he was jailed, maybe he was put on ice like Bucky. I think a redemption story would be good. I could see there being, and I kind of pitched this on Geek versus Fire, like a two-hander as far as she becomes Black Panther and he's kind of Golden Jaguar, like Killmonger off to the side where he is. I think it's going to be a little similar to Loki and Thor, but I'm excited to see what that character of Killmonger could do sticking around in the MCU. And if this is true, and if it's more than just a little role, if he's back and he's, trying to make good for what happened in the past or whatever it may be, I think he's one of the most interesting characters they have in the MCU. So sign me up, and I do hope this one's true. This one though, I'll be interested, and I don't know if we'll ever learn this if this was always the plan or if this was a plan when they had to pivot, and that's what will. I wonder if we'll ever get an answer to that if this is true.
Yeah, I think you don't have to sell me much on Michael B. Jordan. I've been a fan since
No,
I first saw him in Fruitville Station. It's
yeah,
there's no, that's one of those that's saying I will watch any movie that he is in just because he is an outstanding talent at that point. So if it wasn't in the plan and they needed to bring him in to kind of find a way to bridge a little bit, I do not foresee him taking the mantle. I still am in the camp that it's going to be Shuri,
Mhm.
and I will not be disappointed if that is the direction, because I'd say no. This is it's like, oh, it's all ruined. Is it? But again, I've read the comics. There's so many different
Yeah.
stories I know when they adapt, so it doesn't surprise me. It's always cool to see it depicted. I just don't see. I see if they're going to do it. I do see redemption,
Yeah.
but I do not see him. I think there has to be atonement for what is done, but also the redemption has to be earned in the sense of I think he also needs to see how Wakanda has changed and he sees possible error of his ways, but also he sees that Wakanda has seen and learned from what he was trying to bring out at that
Mhm.
point. And I don't think he's going to be a total 180. I think to change that character fully is wrong, but I think there has to be, and I think we kind of saw a little bit of hints of that on his deathbed,
Yeah.
or quote unquote his supposed deathbed.
Yeah, I think whenever he gets brought back, there'll be some tentative of we can't trust him versus he can't trust us either. I don't think it's just gonna be like, yeah, I've seen a change of my ways and I'm with Wakanda now and everything. Like, no, there's gonna be some
Yeah,
struggle. I think it's even gonna be like he could be that character that goes to Doom and in a scene like, I got information for you, and we don't know, is this part of the plan? Is he turning on Wakanda? I think he'll always be, like I said, I do think he's going to be this kind of, if he sticks around these phases of all, like a new Loki in a sense, where Loki, you never knew where he stood. And I think Killmonger will not be exact like that. I see his redemption coming a lot sooner, but it could be like at any point he could switch over because Eric Killmonger is just a very strong-minded character. But I hope he sticks around because, like you said, you don't need something like Michael B. Jordan. He's a fantastic talent.
yeah. So we'll see at that point. It's if these rumors play out. I mean, as fandom likes to say, fandom wires, they always like pointing out like our track record every time they kind of break a story like this. Is like, okay, we get it, but there's a reason why people sometimes doubt and certain things that you say.
Oh
We're not
yeah,
going to
we
get into that. I just find it interesting that they have to preface all the stories right at the end of it. Here are the stories that we broke just to prove our point. Is like, you don't have to do that if you feel like you've risen to that level.
Yeah, I think eventually they will drop that. I think it's just tough because there's, like we've talked about this before, there's a online war between the bloggers and like the scoopers. And I mean, the
Yeah.
scoopers are like the deadlines of Variety, it's Hollywood Reporter, and there's just like we've seen lots of times where, like I even saw today where Disney Insider didn't get credit for
Yeah,
something. I
which
think it
is
was
a shame. And again, if this
yeah.
story breaks, I want Fandom Wire to get credit despite certain things I feel about certain of their main people there. So
Yeah, because it's just like it's just facts, you know.
yeah.
So yeah, before we get to this
As Sinbad says, those are just facts,
those
baby.
are just the facts. Those are just facts. Yeah. Before we continue on the news, we'll take our second ad break and get that out of the way and fill up the web fluid shooters as we always do. Yep. All right, we're back. Here we go.
So yeah, we're back. Hope you all enjoyed that little break. Hope you enjoyed your car ads,
Yeah,
lawyers,
I can't remember what I got
wear a
this week.
mask.
Yeah, yeah. We're in this together.
Yes, we're in this together. All right. So we've got, again, we're doing a theme. We got back to back kind of similar stories. So why don't you take this? This is your baby. You showed off your new baby at that point. Why don't you take these next ones? This is your boy.
Oh wow, you're feeding Mr. Hawk up to me first. So yeah, so we got
I am.
cats. I'm gonna start with in my opinion, it's not that controversial, but I'll start with the less controversial one, and let's see if I don't butcher her name because I haven't seen her in anything. But
Neither have I.
May Calmay. You think that's how you say it last name? May Calmay.
We'll go with good enough for government work.
Calloway, yeah, joins Oscar Isaac in Disney Plus series. It's an unknown role at the moment, but it was reported by Hollywood Reporter, so I imagine she is cast. And it is one of those things where with Moon Knight, eventually, like we know they're going to do the different personalities, but that's with his different personalities come different characters. So it's one of these that you don't know where she's going to be. But I feel like if what we were going to talk about also with Moon Knight was happening, I feel like they're casting some of the more main roles now. So whatever the main female lead is, I don't know if it's the same love interest, but I think whether it's a main female lead on the good or bad side, I think this is what she will be playing. I'm not sure. It's tough because with Moon Knight, there's lots of characters that I don't think other than like Moon Knight himself have to be gender eccentric. Like there's not many, like if there's certain characters that are Jewish, but there's people like if like Ethan Hawke's playing Dracula, anybody could play Dracula, or something like that,
Yeah.
right? So it's like I don't know who should be playing. I know people have thrown out some potential options, but it's just like you really don't know with Moon Knight because you could be dealing with four sets of different characters.
Yeah, I mean the character, like you said, the love interest Marlene, she does fit into
Yeah.
kind of the casting call. They left it as open to all ethnicities. Her background is actually she's Egyptian on her father's side and Palestinian on her mother's side, so that she has so the character from the comics is going to be altered, but again, they left it open to all ethnicities. So I think that's the running theory at this point. The
Yeah,
other idea,
if
go
you
ahead.
were to ask me, I would say Marlene she's the top pick. It's just one of those that I don't, because it's like some weird stuff in Moon Knight, and you could easily have, like, I think they are saying this, but she could easily be a female lead on the other side that is antagonist. But people have been talking about like when is Marlene going to cast, and I am wondering. I'm wondering kind of what they're going to do with Marlene. But go ahead.
Yeah, I think one of the other roles I heard was could be playing one of the Egyptian roles, specifically the female lead is described as a strong, intelligent, self-sufficient, and always two steps
Yeah,
ahead.
that's what
She
I
is
was
she
thinking.
she is 5 years older than the casting call for it. They were
Mhm.
looking for someone. She's currently 34 years old, so they're looking for someone in late 20s, I guess, for that role. But again, nothing age is meaningless and makeup's an amazing thing.
Well, and to be honest, these Moon Knight Egyptian gods and people he's always talking to, like they're kind of ageless. If it was 5 years, I could see them being like, yeah, but she's really right for the role. She works. I don't go, oh, but she's not this age. So that's what I mean. Like I don't want to just jump to Marlene yet because there's lots of characters that can be female centric on the other kind of like creepier
Mhm.
and whatever side. I'm just excited we're getting casting. I know we didn't cover this a few weeks ago because it was just a little story, but there's like a projected date of it coming summer 2022, which is like
Yeah.
I like it. It's still far. I want it. But you know what? As soon as I can get it, I'm happy. And then some other casting was Ethan Hawke has joined Moon Knight as the main villain of the series. And Chris, you used to watch wrestling, and do you remember what the $1 Million Man used to say?
I know he's Ted DiBiase. I can't
Mhm.
remember the saying for the
His
life of me.
saying was, "Everybody has a price for the million
Oh,
dollar
yep, you're
man."
right. Yep,
Yeah,
yep, you're right. Because
and
he'd always try to buy his way out of ever wrestling. You're right.
yeah, and that's what I thought with
I got
Ethan
that
Hawke.
reference. I got that one.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah. So this is like just a little personal thing because we talked about in our very first episode. My favorite Marvel movie is Logan. I could make a case for I think that's even better than The Dark Knight. I think it's just a masterpiece of a film. Despite that stupid phone camera footage, I hate that part of the movie. It makes no sense. But other than that, it's great. But I remember, so I was really waving the flag that I think Jackman should have got nominated. I think Stewart should have got nominated. I
I
think
agree.
Logan in general, especially to me, there is some years I look, I go, oh, I understand. Both in all those categories, I looked at multiple films and went, I don't get it. And I still felt
Victim of when it was released. It was released in March.
it is, but also Get Out was released in February. And that's where I still think they had like, even though it was 2017 and Black Panther and Joker were coming up, I still think even at that time, they were still slant as
But
what Hawk would say, you can't nominate a film with a guy with claws for Best Picture. And I think there was enough people like him that thought that they went, we'll give the screenplay nomination. That's fine. But we can't put Hugh Jackman there, you know?
and I think also though Logan was very much I agree it's definitely on my top films top
Mhm.
superhero MCU, no, not MCU, but you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I think Get Out had a much more staying talked about
Yes.
conversation that lasted a while longer, and how it was. But again, this is not the Oscar talk of who should have been.
Well, no, it's not. But even to
Yeah.
that point, as far as Black Panther also came in February and had that talk too, as well. It's just like a game changer for Hollywood. But the reason it's an Oscar talk is just because you can go back and he kind of walked some of the comments back, but like he just talked down quite a bit to the comic book kind of film genre and
He
stuff like
did.
that. And it's just one of those. It's just kind of It's tough, right? Because we had that with Scorsese last year and stuff. But even the way Scorsese to me talked about it, to me it never. If there was sometimes, yeah, maybe some phrase, but it didn't feel so much as far as talking down. It was just a certain point of view. Where Hawk just kind of was like, like the Oscars are like kind of above this sort of thing. It's like, dude, you haven't even won an Oscar. Come talk to me when that happens. So like, the thing is, so I could put that all aside. I just found that funny of like, oh, 3 years you're begging, I'm now 4 years later you're gonna be the main villain of Moon Knight. Okay, it's kind of funny how things change, and I'm excited
This
for
is
that
the way he sticks it to comic books. I'm going to be the villain and I'm going to go after your hero.
Yeah, and it's funny. It's just like I'm excited for that press tour because people are gonna ask him these things, and he'll give us, oh yeah, it's changed the genre, it's grown so much. It's like, okay,
But at that point he's going to answer that question. It's going to be the lead question at some point, and then it's just going to die out.
yeah, and 100%. And you know what? And everybody, and this is why I'm having some fun with it. But everybody has a option to change their mind. Not mean option like
Yes.
A or B, but I mean like he could have said these comments and people could have came to him. Or you know what? What if he one time bumped into Hugh Jackman and like a little awkward of like, oh, so my movie's not like. All it takes is for a few people or things that, hey, maybe watch this, give this another try, and maybe it is just money, sure, but maybe it's not, and that's my hope. And as far as Ethan Hawke, great actor. It's one of those things like it's not bad to add talent. He's a very talented guy. I love that Moon Knight is Oscar Isaac is already a huge get. If you get Ethan Hawke, that's just another huge get. I love that they're kind of stacking the show already with a character, which I think they do this with MCU as far as the bigger characters, you can get lesser known actors. Then when you get someone like Captain Marvel, we're gonna load that with Oscar winner Brie Larson. You got Sam Jackson, like Thor. Look at Thor around him. No one knew Hemsworth was like Anthony Hopkins, Natalie Portman. Like they like to do that. Doctor Strange, lesser known character. You get Benedict Cumberbatch, Rachel McAdams, stuff like that. Tilda Swinton. So I like that they're loading this up. I'm excited to see what he is. There's been speculation who he's gonna be. I guess it's so
it's tough because a lot of the big named like antagonist villains for Moon Knight, he's not fitting. Like the biggest one, like Bushman,
yeah.
they're gonna this will be the biggest slap in the face to that character at that point because one big thing is he's of African descent.
Yeah, I don't think they're going
Just
that
say,
route after,
I think MCU is trying to stay away from whitewashing and like I think
Yeah.
this is the phase we really try not to do that.
People and some jerks thought there was a debate of like, oh, is Oscar Isaac Jewish enough? Yeah, imagine if they cast Ethan Hawke as Bushman, like, yeah, let's see how
All
that
the
goes.
goodwill MCU and Kevin Feige had, just one casting gone.
Yeah, and it was interesting because I remember way back when we started this whole shindig called Marvel Alliance, there was rumors of Bushman being a villain. But if you look at some of his stories, and especially if you go look at the 2016 one, which was recent, I think they'll pull some. Bushman was a part of his origins, but he wasn't around a lot once he became Moon Knight. And I wonder if the same way, and I refer this, Travis will like this, but I still think they're going to do this. I think this is going to be very Arrow-ish, where you met Deathstroke or Slade Wilson on the island way before he came back in Oliver's life as a bad guy. So I could even see Bushman being in the origins and not even being further. Maybe Ethan Hawke is just a cool businessman that he hires Bushman, kind of like Kingpin and Bullseye from the Daredevil, and that's how you get Bushman back. But everyone assumed, oh, if Bushman's in this, he's the main villain. So either there's maybe two, or maybe it's just he's the villain of the origins. I know people have thrown out he could be Dracula because Moon Knight has a history of Dracula and Ethan Hawke's played a vampire before. Maybe, but I just don't. I see him playing someone more based in reality, in my opinion. I don't see him being an Egyptian god. I don't see it being Dracula. I'd see it being whatever the grounded part of the show is that he could be. Someone that maybe turns his back on Mark Spector, hires, something like that. But whatever the role is, I have faith that Ethan Hawke will do a very good job.
Yeah, one of the other ones I've heard is Jack Russell, Werewolf by Night.
That's interesting. I
Hey,
hadn't heard that one.
Let's get weird at that point. I mean, Werewolf by Night is like, he's typically a hero, but the idea of when it's full moon, he has gone loony and done some bad stuff at
Full
that
werewolf,
point.
as Joker says in 2019. Yep. Yeah,
So again, it's this one is very hard to pin down because it's just his look, his personality, what we've seen him do. Just it's not fitting any of the main ones we know from Moon Knight's history.
So Werewolf by Midnight it's so interesting because that is in my omnibus by right here. That's when Moon Knight that's issue But it's funny that like I love Moon Knight, I love Wolverine, and I love that two of my favorite Marvel characters that debuted as like antagonists slash villains, and and it's so funny that like not so much with Hulk, but Moon Knight debuts in Werewolf by Midnight, and like he's so much more popular now than Werewolf by Midnight now. Like it's just so funny. But I've heard this before, and I've talked about this a lot with Taylor because he's a huge Ghost Rider fan. So anytime we talk about that, we have to get in like the dark MCU stuff. And I feel like how do you feel? We talked about
Oh,
this
it's not going to
Wanda.
be easy.
No. Like, so that's the question of like we talked about this with WandaVision, right? And with Magic. How do you feel when we get to a Blade? It's different because it was established, but how do you feel the mainstream is going to take once we get like, hey, there's werewolves in this universe now. There is vampires because Blade
There's the devil.
yeah, there's like we are getting in that supernatural realm, and that's where I do think Werewolf by Night or Midnight, however you want to say it. I just call them by midnight all the time because
Yeah, I was wondering. I think it's by night, but we'll go with midnight.
yeah, it is by night. But I think there was one time in a comic book they were calling it like Werewolf by Midnight, and it stuck with Ed. And I think I think that's too much for season one, in my opinion. I don't think you pull that card yet, and I don't. I think if Moon Knight is, I think it could be a multiple season show. We'll see, but I think you save that. I think Moon Knight has a lot to take in already. I think a werewolf could be that's a heavy task to do, and I think you could say that for season two, introduce them, but they don't have to face off. I don't think Wolverine's debut in the MCU is going to be fighting the Hulk. It might be fun, but I know people draw those conclusions, but I hadn't heard that, and that is always a question to me. Two questions I have in my mind is when did Evan Peters pop on WandaVision? Who's playing MODOK? And I'll add a third as far as when are we going to see Werewolf by Night? Because it crosses that another line of like, okay, this is very weird. And like, can people take that in the same world Iron Man existed, that there's a werewolf, you know?
Yeah, and then when is Mephisto going to ruin Spider-Man's life?
Or
Please,
Brent's
God.
life.
Well, it's going to ruin mine because I have the same opinion of Mephisto as Brent does at this point. Not saying I want that. It's just like we said, we have a very drawing thing when Mephisto and the spiders get involved.
If Mephisto is in that show, I know he does Marvel Squadcast. I'll be excited for listen to it, but I will be hitting up right away, and he will be guesting on this episode if his schedule permits. Because I just want to, I would love to talk to him and just get his reaction. Because it's just kind of like I feel like feel the same way as when I saw Jared Leto returning for Sirenka, and I was like, well, what's going on? And you just have this shock of like, okay, let's see what happens. And we're only 2 months away from that. I mean, we're less than a few weeks away from Mephisto. The weird red black hair, you know, this weird singlet thong thing he wears. Like what? Like they have to change all that. There's no way that's happening.
The image you have right now is just like if you've never seen that. Ooh boy,
he is a creepy looking guy though. He's
the devil. What do you expect him to be?
But they kind of make him like a sexy devil, which is kind of weird. Like he looks like, I'm sorry if any kids like a porn devil. That's what he looks like. He doesn't look like he does. He's not why
the topics of this show I did not think of we uttering tonight is the word porn and sexy looking devil, but why not?
Why is the devil wearing just like a one piece over his crotch? You know, like it's a weird costume. Like he doesn't even have a suit on, you know, just weird.
I know. I'm just saying, it's like, you know, you never know how these conversations are gonna go. So
so hopefully Ethan Hawke does a good job. I'm excited to see.
Well, we go from sexy devil to our last two quick hit stories of the night. Marvel Studios head teases Nova's MCU introduction from comicbook.com. So BD had a big week. BD started his first podcast, Phase Zero. Definitely gave it that first listen. He's doing a good job. Doesn't necessarily need our plug, but I definitely like where they're going at that point.
Never again. No plugs ever again. No.
No plugs ever again. But we would love to have him on the show, and if he would come down from where he is. But he had a great interview with Feige, and he's gone on the record. He's a huge Nova fan. He jokes around wanting to be cast as Nova.
Yeah. It's his pinned tweet.
Yep, exactly. But he did ask Feige about the plans for that, saying, you know, clearly we're not shying away from the cosmic end of storytelling right now, the sweet spot of the Nova Corps and Nova himself. He asked the question, you know, answering the question, is Nova coming in? Yes, in the sense of either Sam Alexander or Richard Rider. He said yes, not necessarily committing to one thing. But he said, you know, it's up to the idea, like, we're going to get one of them, you know, at some point. And I think, again, like Feige's original plan excuse me, my nose is pretty stuffy tonight. That this plan was supposed to going more cosmic these next
Yeah.
couple of phases in a sense. So I think to go cosmic, you can't ignore Nova Corps. And yes, we know in Infinity War the Nova Corps homeworld was destroyed, but we just heard that about off screen. We don't know in what state destroyed or non-existent. But Nova Corps has always been in existence. So yes, bring on Nova.
Yeah, to me that just sounds like a perfect origin to start there and see, which one you go with. I still feel like you go with Sam. I've said this a few
Yeah,
reasons. You don't.
champions,
Yeah,
Young Avengers.
champions. You don't need a character named Dick Ryder in the MCU. Things like that. But
Oh, the memes, the
but yes,
memes.
but yeah, I'm excited for Brent. I always said that I've read, Annihilation being the biggest one. I've never fully locked into the character. It's the same way. It's funny, like Ultimate Spider-Man, how Spider-Man is always annoyed with Nova. That's kind of me. And anytime I read him, I never clicked with him. And I've said when we get an announcement or when we get close, we'll do like a comic book club of that character and find. I'll probably ask Brent, say, give me the one that's gonna sell me on Nova, either one. And I don't hate the character, but it's always just kind of been like, okay, cool, and then I move along. But I'm excited for. I know there's many people like Brand and Brent that are wanting him. I know he's been one that's been requested quite a bit, and I've actually been surprised it's taken this long, to be honest. I thought we would have gotten an announcement by now, maybe not a movie or show by now, but an announcement or an appearance from that character. I am quite surprised it's taken this long. We are going cosmic, but at the same time we're going multiverse. We still have lots of earthbound people. We might be going supernatural with werewolves running around at some point. So it's like
And
we
devils
yeah,
and skimpy
sexy
clothing.
devils, sexy devils. So I'm excited for the fans, and I'm excited to be sold because hey, sometimes that happens where there's versions of live action or anime that you like better than the comic book, and then that kind of gets you a bit more into it, So
Yep.
I'm open for it, and I want it for the fans, and I think it should happen, should be soon, I would imagine. But I like I said, I'm surprised it still hasn't.
I think that's a phase 5 kind of thing. I think
Yeah.
him teasing it and not necessarily denying it. I mean, Feige can like be coy and it never happens, but he went a little more on the record than he does when he's like, anything can happen. You never know, like the Netflix people.
Yeah. Do you envision Nova debuting in a solo film or Spider-Man Black Panther style?
Um, I could see this one being solo. And the reason I say that is because, again, I think you're always trying to look out for building your audience and
Mm-hmm.
building your younger audience and having characters they latch on to and bringing new people into characters. So I think this would be a good kind of solo, especially if it's going, the Richard Rider or not Richard Rider, Sam Alexander, excuse me.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I agree with you because I don't. There's a few places we could chart out that maybe Fantastic Four. I don't think so. The only one I think could is a potential Captain Marvel. I could see Captain Marvel 2 being some sort of cameo, something like that. But I also don't know if he has the same chutzpah as other characters like a Black Panther, Spider-Man did, where it's like, I don't know if that really sells it. So I think you have to sell it. And you have other people like Eternals, Shang-Chi, of characters that are lesser known that are still getting their own solo movies. And he's even more known than them, right? So I tend to agree that I think it would be a solo in the sense also you could do Captain Marvel, where maybe you add some supporting characters that are known elsewhere in the MCU just to puff it up a little bit. But again, Guardians, Shang-Chi, they didn't have to puff it up. Shang-Chi we haven't seen, but I'm hoping it's gonna be a hit. I'm hoping it's gonna be a good movie. So yeah, I'm excited for when we get those announcements. Like I said, I imagine if everything goes according to plan, there's not many delays. Next investors call, we might have to start getting some dates because we get these movies.
Yeah,
Who knows? I just feel like they should, hopefully drop Black Widow when we get there. But
it'll happen. We're seeing it this year.
I hope so because eventually then those shows start to catch the movie and their hands are kind of tied. So
Well,
I
I think they're purposely trying to tie their own hands at this point. I think no, I really honestly do. They're putting this stuff to make sure that they're going to have to make a decision.
yeah, and I hope it's same as HBO Max or Premier
For,
Access. I don't care.
free cup of coffee in the break room says it's happening. So.
Yep, there you go.
All right, last story, real quick one, also coming from BD and his podcast Phase Zero. His sources confirm that and it's a very reliable source. He says, same source that said Owen Wilson was in Loki and turned out to be true, and a couple of others before that. Charlie Cox was on the set of Spider-Man 3. I don't know if he's Daredevil yet or fresh Daredevil. Nobody knows if he's fresh Daredevil or if he's fresh Matt Murdock. But again, I think we've also heard the rumors that he has also wrapped his spot on Spider-Man 3, which again fits with everything we've hearing. 1 to 3 days cameo appearance at that point to have some significant merit to it. But I think it's pretty much we're as much as confirmation we're going to get for a while that Charlie Cox's Daredevil is officially making his introduction, his true introduction to the MCU.
Yeah, I know we've talked about the Toby Andrew thing of will they, won't they. I see pros and cons for both as far as I'd love still to go knowing, not seeing photos of them, but it's like just advertising. How do you hold that back? How do you not show the 3 Spider-Men on a poster? So I get it. This is one that I don't think you get confirmed at all till movie. I think this is one they deny. Because Charlie Cox, it's big for us fans, but my mom will just be like, oh, that's the guy. He did the Netflix show, right? That's cool. We're like, Toby, Andrew, oh, those are Spider-Man. I know who those are. The Charlie Cox thing, I think if it is, especially that small role, that is that like gasping moment. And yeah, maybe we know it, sure, but it's like, it's a confirmation. And still,
I look forward to being back in a theater when this movie comes out and seeing, because that's what I love is seeing, I know certain things are happening, but I don't know when it's going to happen. I get a different reaction of saying, ooh, yes, it's here, versus everyone's like, oh my God, you hear that gasp in the audience.
Yeah, I was talking about this with my fiance the other day. I really hope the world is even at least half full theaters could be when Spider-Man's there. Because if I have to see Spider-Man 3, that's what, like, I'm not getting into that argument or debate, but that is one that I want to see in the theater, not because the big screen, just because the fan experience. Every kind of other Marvel DC stuff I could probably take. I'd like to see the Batman on the big screen with a crowd, but like Spider-Man, those moments, like imagine like that moment, hopefully when Toby comes and you hear that Danny Elfman score just pounding and you're like, oh my God, it's happening, or like a version, like a tribute to it. I want to be in a theater of people around me hootering and hauling. And that's one thing. If I have to watch that movie from my couch, I'm gonna be super depressed. I'll be happy, but I'll just be like, man, this is not the same. So I hope we do get that. And same like you said with the gas, the Charlie Cox, stuff like that. So yeah, and there's still some doubt because at the end of the day, no one got a photo of him. It's all reports until there's no photo of them.
You know what? It's kind of like what we have in my friends group at that point in our younger years, since most of us are now married. It's like, oh, I'm dating so and so. No, you're not. Why? I've never met her. She doesn't exist. You're a liar. She meets here. She doesn't exist.
Exactly. Has to be confirmed. Remember, for a whole year, Matt Smith was apparently in episode 9. I didn't see Matt Smith in episode 9 anywhere. So you know what? Anything can always fall through, So
I didn't see Daniel Craig. He wasn't in that Stormtrooper. I don't know what you're talking about, 007.
Nope. Not at all.
So,
all
right.
Yeah, I guess
but a lot of news.
Yeah,
I mean, it was a lot of news that we weren't expecting. We were kind of hoping it was just going to be a little more Wandavision, but I think these were kind of all bigger tier stories that we thought were definitely worth conversation.
Oh yeah, that's old in the future. We'll cover some of the bigger ones and whatnot. And I hope you all enjoy that. We are going to take our last ad break. We're going to get a Fact or Fictions and Comic Book Club. We have a very interesting one to tie in with our main topic, WandaVision. So we will be right back. We are back. So last week was your Fact or Fiction. So I'm going to pull these up. And luckily, actually, I haven't looked at the results, so I don't know. So first one, Fact or Fiction, Doctor Strange or Loki will appear in WandaVision. Fact, 93%, 7% fiction. I think you and I were both fact on that as far as there's some chance with the crossovers and whatnot we've heard about that could happen. So seems like people agree with us there.
Yep.
There will be a scene tributing the House of M, no more mutants in WandaVision, but it won't be the word mutants. 79% fact, 21% fiction. So a little less fact there.
And I'll tell you right now, I'm not counting necessarily her saying no to the beekeeper stuff. I want no one called me on that, but I say if someone does, I was like, that's not the cop out I'm looking for.
And then, well, finally for your ones, Evan Peter will appear in WandaVision, but not as Quicksilver. 56% fact, 44% fiction. Very close. I think you and me were both fact on that one last week, but after this week, between the episode and things I've heard, I'm definitely on the fiction camp now.
Yeah, I've heard some things as well, so that's fine.
Yeah,
I'm
and there's some things we don't talk about because we don't, and there this is not anything big or a spoiler thing, but just some stuff you go, okay, just in case could be too spoilery. And I've just heard stuff where it's like, yeah, this might be a bit more tangible. And if that does happen, I'm just excited. That is going to be that might be an if that were to happen, I'm telling Chris this right now, that may be emergency MA because that is what because we talked about this before, but still the implications of Evan Peters does show up as Quicksilver, and not as a one-off. And I was like, oh, you heard him. That is just a can of worms because it's just like I would never ever thought a cameo, sure, but if this is literally their intro, like I would have never thought bringing all the Fox X in the MCU or anything like that. So it's just like if that happens, they're that's crazy. I'm just surprised with some stuff I hear nowadays.
yeah. Well, hey,
And then
maybe.
and then yeah,
Yeah, you had a
maybe. And then
bonus.
I had a bonus. It was 50-50. If you want, there's still 12 hours to vote because I thought I put out the bonus with the rest of them, but I didn't. So I checked it. I'm like, oh my God, Kevin Feige will appear in Deadpool 3, but it's 50-50 right now. We've only had like one or two of those. So, and I think that's warrant 50-50 because I could see a case for either way. So, yeah. So I'm going to give you my fact or fictions, and I'm going to go off from what we were just talking about last in the news. Fact or fiction, Charlie Cox here only as Matt Murdock and not suited as Daredevil in Spider-Man 3.
Ooh, do I go with my heart or do I go with my head? That's another. That's an interesting one.
Mm-hmm.
I I say it's Daredevil. I say he's suited up. I think that's
Okay.
one. I
He's
think
suited
that's
up. Okay.
he's suited up as Daredevil, and the only reason I say that is because Feige, being as big of a fan he is, he enjoys having little things of fan service at this point. He knows how big this movie is getting, and probably cursing under his breath every time something leaks out of this movie. Um, but this is something a lot of us fans have wanted to see them, like, besides all three of these Spider-Man
Oh yes.
on screen, we've saying I want to see a Daredevil Spider-Man team up. And if this is as close we get for right now, I will take it. And if it brings us to Charlie Cox into the MCU proper, I'll take it. But I say he's suiting up. He's suiting up as Daredevil.
Yeah, this may just be personal experience and the people I know and just how I grew up. But I feel like if you were make a list of the top 10 like crossovers that people like as far as Marvel and DC, I think Daredevil and Spider-Man are somewhere in that list because they just have such a good dichotomy with one another. And I want that. I'm with you. I'm with Brent too. Almost every day is posting a new photo of those two together. And it is like, and that just purely comes from I got it in comic books, but was the animated series, that episode of Matt Murdock defending Peter Parker, that right away was like, oh, I love this dynamic. I love these two together. It's tough for me because you said two things that make me go very down the middle as far as yes, Kevin Feige's a big fan, but then you also said like, and this movie's getting so big. And that's what I wonder. Is there a spot to naturally fit him in? Because we've all talked about this. You don't want Flash or this to feel like Crisis on Infinite Earth, where the cameos end up maybe hurting it because it was just a cameo for the sake of cameo. Is there purpose for him to get in the suit and to fight? And that's the thing where is it just, and this is what I thought today, maybe if they, because we've heard some rumors that they are doing the J.K. Simmons thing, that it's going to be, he's playing Daredevil, Matt Murdock, but it's not the Netflix one. It's just a legacy he's brought back over. I could see something like during the blip at Endgame, he took over crime fighting because, like whatever the
Yeah.
reason is, right? Lots of things happened that 5 years, and that's why he could be in Hell's Kitchen, stuff like that. But I wonder, I know people have always said, oh, Peter Parker needs a lawyer jokingly, but maybe that is it. Maybe it is just a lawyer thing. I just don't know. Before we got this multiverse stuff, I would have said if he's in this, he's suiting up. But now I'm actually going to say, fact, he will not suit up because I think this will be a fun introduction. But I don't know if there's a reason for him to suit up in the multiverse stuff. I don't know if the crime level is going to be so small for Matt Murdock to get involved. There could be right away. Maybe there is. Maybe he just helps him out in the scene. He may bump into each other. Maybe it's the reverse. Maybe he's just Daredevil and not Matt Murdock. But that's what I'm going with right now, but I want to be wrong. I want to be so wrong. I want the costume, and I need to see those two together in a costume.
Yeah, and again, this is one of those I could see both sides very easily,
Yeah.
and in the sense of if we get him only as Matt Murdock playing the lawyer, things like that, I still think we get a hint, subtle look at the costume, because Matt Murdock is one of those ones that Even it'll fit in the MCU. No one has secret identities in the MCU. Very
Mhm.
few are able to keep it at that point. And Matt Murdock's one of the greatest defenders of everyone knows who Matt Murdock is.
So it's tough because it's a Sony film, and I thought about their end credits, and their end credits always have to do with one another. So I would say no personally. But do you
Yeah.
think there's a chance that if he was just Matt Murdock, the end credit scene could be teasing the suit, teasing him as Daredevil?
Mm. No, I don't see an end credit scene with
Yeah.
that necessarily, unless there's a new deal reached between Marvel and Sony.
Yeah, it sucks because if it was any other Marvel movie, I'd say, like, let's say he debuted in She-Hulk and he was just Matt Murdock. I could see the end credit of that being, oh, there's more to Matt Murdock than you think. Like for the new casuals, the younger audience, like, oh, this is Daredevil. That's cool. But I agree with you. But who knows? Maybe it's just the start of the relationship. I do not want them to miss that opportunity, them together. But maybe this is them appearing more together down the line, like they did in the comic books, and I hope so.
Yeah. So, all right. What's your next one?
My second one is we talked about this a bit earlier, so it's a tie into again some of our topic. All these are actually tied into our topics. Is WandaVision's kids will not become, or Wanda and Visions. I'm just saying them, as a show. They will not become Young Avengers in the MCU. Their whole kind of life will be this show, the demise of it, and then we'll move forward.
Yeah, the more and more I see this again, I think this is a show. I mean, but of course, it's just based on WandaVision. I think what I mean by that is that I think to add the twins in the sense of the abilities and things like that, I don't see it yet. I
Mm-hmm.
just, that may be something they're holding secret. Obviously, we don't know all the things from the trailers. It doesn't strike me as something that we will see much of. And if they are in it at that point, it's one of the things that she loses.
I can't say anything else because that's exactly how I feel. Because I thought about that. I know me and Brent talked about it a couple episodes ago, and you guys even did when I was gone about like champions and young Avengers and like the roster, and we were talking about all these people that are popping up, and like, oh, the twins are one of them. But we've seen that before where I talked about, Hank Pym not creating Ultron. We talked about before where the director of Avengers and whatnot wanted to be like, hey, I want Wasp, and that didn't work out, right? There was rumors of Captain Marvel being in Avengers Age of Ultron, and that didn't work out. I could see also a Champions Young Avengers. I think they have enough characters where if the twins aren't in it, it's not like you're really missing a core. It's like I feel like you can get away with it and have a lot of cool other characters in there that are being introduced right now and not have them going forward. And I'm fact on that one that I think their storyline as of right now will stay sustained to this because again I'm still that person that I don't know how much more, especially if Wanda's more on the villain side, how much more she has left in the MCU if they don't bring back a Vision as like a white Vision or stuff like that. Like I could see her, she talked about this week, you shared me that article of her, not she's not on a multi-deal contract this time, it's a film by film thing or a project by project. And if she's gone, if Vision's gone, if there's no Quicksilvers at all, I don't see a need for the twins really right now. So
Yeah, I mean it's something we want, but I
yeah.
just don't see it fitting. I don't see it yet fitting into the show proper
Mhm.
in that sense. But we'll see.
And my final one is if Chris Evans does come back, which we're just assuming he is, he will appear in. I guess I didn't put a time. Well, you know what?
Do
Whatever
your
this.
standard. Do your
So
standard.
whatever this deal is that he has for this new Chris Evans comeback, he will appear in more than 3 Marvel projects.
Um, I'm gonna say fiction on that. I
Mhm.
think since you said more than three, I think three is the limit. Um, because again, I do truly believe that I think he wants the character to be remembered for what it was, and if whatever role he is going to be is quote unquote Captain America stands a chance. It's not one of those where people say, bring back Tony too early, his death means nothing. That's a whole debate for another day.
Yeah.
Just read comics and you'll understand why that's just silly to say. um, but I mean, I get it. But anyways, I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole. I think that the I think he wants to continue to have. I like that he has to have 1 foot back in the MCU, but I think it's just going to be that 1 foot, and I think that's why it's very limited. So I think three is the limit. Even the article kind of said one with the possibility of maybe another, but I think three is going to be the limit if we even get to three.
I agree with you. I'll go fiction as well. I think the only thing that could break this is small cameos and other things like an end credit or just a setup. If it's something where it's like evil Captain America and he's sprinkled throughout a few movies, that could be the thing of like a scene here, a scene there. I think three is the cap, but I still, no pun intended, but I think there's possibility to it because I thought two was maybe too easy because I thought that was like, okay, appearance and setup, then a movie, then all it takes is one more. But that's why three, it's like it's kind of this middle number of yeah, I agree with you. I think three will be the limit, but then all it takes is one like Thor Dark World style cameo, and then we're over the three. So who
Yeah.
knows? But yeah, so I made those little theme news. I'll put those out later this week, and please vote and send us any if you have them in the future.
Yep. All right. So let's get to the issue. One of the issues. I think this is one of my favorites, if not my favorite issue
Mm-hmm.
of the Vision series, number 7, because this is one I've been waiting on, where we get to see um, the relationship between Wanda and Vision, and seeing that history, which I think was very important.
Yes. Just to start off, one, that cover is fantastic. It's like
Oh yeah.
very like sensual, but then it's just kind of seductive, but then it's scary at the same time. So cover is fantastic. The art in this issue particularly is really good. But
Oh, and
yeah,
I totally forgot the other Easter egg with that, and the joke reminded me of it. Vision constantly being told he's a toaster.
oh
At that
yes,
point,
yeah.
that the toaster itself is another
Mm-hmm.
cheeky Easter egg from
I laughed
WandaVision.
when I that last night. I was like, oh, this is so funny. We just had this. So yeah, I'm with you as far as this is one of my favorites. Their dynamic has always been interesting, but this kind of shows that, and it is like it's a great history lesson because I think it works in both ways. Like it fills you in on this story, but then also for mainstream, I think would fill you in on their almost entire history together and things like that. Like there is lots of stuff in here. It kind of works as a two-hander, and I really like it. Like I said, the art. It's a simple issue, but it's like you said, it's one that's needed, and I love everything they do with these two, and it kind of shows why Vision has these motivations.
Yeah, and it's one of those things. We see them at their how in love they were, and how
Mhm.
important Wanda is to Vision, in the sense of that, how much she helped him become more than the synthetic.
Mhm.
He has life, he has emotion, he has his version of what he calls emotions. He understands in his way what love is. I mean, that's where I love the scene here. There we go. There's a wizard. At that point we get Bova,
Mhm.
and you see the happiness, and you see how much they are. But then I think one of my favorite, and it's just it's saying favorite, but it's so powerful, is him. And this is the scene I think they're gonna be homaging
Yes,
in Vision, is just saying, Wanda, they're not real. And just how she flips out on him. And,
you're not real.
yeah, exactly. It's just like, well, that I said, no, you're not real. It's like, oh, come on, you could have done something better there. But I could see that kind of going down like that. But
Yeah.
but I think it was so powerful, especially when you go to the next scene, when it's White Vision, when his consciousness, his body was destroyed, and now we get basically not only start from scratch Vision, but like does not have the memories or the development that he's had. And so him saying, I'm a new Vision. I have the mechanical parts and memories associated with your father, but I'm not your father. I don't have like the everything. It's like, you are not my children. Your mother is not my wife. It's like, you used to be so kind. Honey, did you miss the part where he says he's not the same person, but he is?
Yeah. It is. It's very interesting because I wonder how many people did read this before the show. Because I've told many people like, "Oh, you should get inspiration," and I was one because of House of M and just the history. I was always telling people at Geek First, like, eventually, and I was saying this like way back when with a lot of other people, of like, they're gonna one day get it on. They're gonna have these kids, and it's gonna be really traumatic. And that's exactly what I think is gonna happen in this issue. I agree with you with this. I think even like White Vision, the Reborn Vision, is a very strong possibility as well. Not
Yeah.
even not like that exact scenario as far as the kids. You're not my but like that scenario of maybe Vision is being worked on, and there is a point of him, but when he gets back, it's not fully formed, and he is just kind of starting from point A. And we've heard them talk about other comic book storylines where White Vision is in them, and they've used that as a source of inspiration, right? So it's
Yeah.
like one of these things where it's just like Vision Quest being the main one. So It is interesting, and it's all really good because yeah, I love just seeing the little stuff like, oh, Captain America sent a blanket and it's American themed. That's all like
Yep.
she is trying to have a normal life and she wants that. And even just like showing them fall in love and everything, it's very kind of again, I think there's some inspiration from it. It's funny, he's
But
writing Watchmen now, but it's very like Silk Spectre, Dr. Manhattan-ish of like the flashbacks and forward of just showing like the small moments, the little moments, and then eventually bad things happening.
But how about the interplay? That scene where she's saying, he's saying it's not real, stuff like that, and she's like, you're a damn toaster, so like they're not real. What are you? And that's like, put that scene back a couple issues back when he is trying to save his daughter with Tony. How much this family that he has created and built means to Vision at that point. He has basically become Wanda in
Yes.
in that moment, just years later.
Well, he's seen what loss slash losing someone can do to a
Yeah.
person, and he is becoming Wanda, but he also doesn't want to become Wanda. If you get the sense of that, as far as
Yeah.
he saw what could happen, and he doesn't want that, and that's what I love near the end of the issue where she is now with Simon, she's now with Wonder Man, and it's like, well, the reason I'm with you is because it's or with him is because it's you, but it's not you. And her almost planting that idea in his head though was the worst thing possible
Oh
because
God, that little inception at that point. You created
exactly
Frankenstein's
that.
monster.
Because now Vision in my mind thinks, oh yeah, I don't need Wanda. I just need someone like Wanda. But what does he do? Luckily for Wanda, Wonder Man was already there and she just go to him and he was a person. He decides he's almost going to try and build that family back up and Wanda back up. And obviously it's at this point in the story it's not going well and it's going to continue not to go well, but you can see that he was a combination of the past lost and maybe the wrong idea plan in his head. That's how he got to this situation. I think it was like the perfect
Yeah.
little origin story to show like he didn't just snap and go, oh, I'm going to start committing crime and help my wife cover up murder and stuff like that. It's just like it's a bunch of the Yellow Brick Road leading to this scenario. Obviously not a good scenario.
No, it's not. I think, like I said, the scenes with Wanda and them arguing White Vision, but I think the closing of that is what he does to Wanda.
Mhm.
Is this middle part of this of the issues are my favorite because they're just so heart wrenching and so emotional, so well written. He says, "You will not remember my words today, just as you will not remember losing Thomas and William to the devil from whom you stole their souls. To protect you, Agatha will take the memories away, destroy your children as easily as you created them. And in this we have in common, you two shall be new. Nevertheless, I'm leaving today to rejoin the East Coast Avengers and to wish to say goodbye. The future has come, Wanda." And then you see him crying. The future
Mhm.
is here. And,
Yeah.
and seeing Vision cry, seeing, just how, he's gotten his memories back. He knows, but he also knows the danger of what Wanda did
Oh
and,
yeah.
and the path that it eventually leads to with House of M.
Yeah. And it's just that's where at that point, like when it's funny now in the family, we don't know how far he's willing to go. We've seen it, but now it's like he's starting to break those barriers. But you could see even because they keep saying it's later, but you can see even a few years or decades before maybe he wouldn't have made the decisions he's making now. But it shows an evolution of the character, but it also shows that unfortunately there's some weakness that comes with all this burden and yeah, that is a really good scene because it's and Wanda's just breaking down. It's heart wrenching stuff, like you said.
Yeah. So, I mean, like I said, right now, if it's been, like I said, it was a couple of years since I've read this, but right now I do remember this as being, if not one of my favorites, my favorite issue of the series. But I like the preview of the cover of the next one. Vision's getting some visitors. Visions are being visited, looks like, by a couple of the Avengers. Iron Man, Captain America, and Thor are coming to visit.
Yeah, well, before this issue, before we got the flashback, it was the whole Avengers learning of what's going on. So now this
He
was the
has he
cool.
has to be stopped.
Yeah, this was the cool down, but now it's the the unfortunate what is it, bowl going into the China shop and the Avengers of the bowl going into the China shop known as the Vision residence, and we'll see how that goes for them.
Yeah, it's from what I remember, it's not going to go well.
No, not at all. But yeah, it's very exciting. It's exciting, especially when I read this last night after the show, and I know what we're going to talk about. I was like, man, it is very crazy, and it's gonna be cool. I think also for people that they haven't read it, if they're reading it now, or even if they're just listening to us talk about it, where we're almost like previewing or preempting this, and then if it does happen,
Yeah.
it's gonna be funny that we can refer back to this. So yeah, I'm excited for next week. Obviously, I'm excited for another WandaVision, and I'm excited for whatever news drops because we got a good flow with the past 2 weeks. So
Yep,
I'm
we'll,
pretty
we'll,
happy.
we'll, we'll see. But again, we always have WandaVision to talk
Yeah.
about now.
Oh
We
yeah.
have content. Yay.
Yeah. Exactly. So,
So,
well, another one in the books. I think everyone that listened, and I think it was a good show today.
yeah, it's, number 32.
Number 32. You can find me at Snail on Twitter. My name is always changing, but the handle never is not. You can check me out
Keeping
on.
us on our toes. You are illusion.
I am. I took the Vision one this week, so there you go. I might
And,
still from WandaVision every week.
and I'll credit Marvel Squadcast. Good catch on that.
Yes.
That illusion and
Glamour Easter egg that
glamour
they
at
were
that point.
magicians they
Good
bumped into.
good
Yeah.
catch on that. That
Yeah.
was one that I totally was trying to figure out too, because I knew they just wasn't a name that they could just come up with.
Yeah. So, yeah, you can find me Travis Snail, lots of stuff. I'm always on Geek First Talking News. We just did check out our Golden Geeks. That's our kind of version of Oscars reward shows. It was different this year because there's a lack of film. So we did 3 instead of 5, but it was tons of fun because we just always debate. There was about a half-hour debate of, well, maybe not half an hour, but like who deserves a best supporting nomination over Chris Pine versus Chris Pratt in Wonder Woman 84 or onward, and it was quite a discussion and whatnot. So yeah, check me out there, and I'm on here. Sometimes appearing other spots on that, but where can they find you, sir?
Yep, you can find me on Twitter at Chris Balga. You can follow the podcast on Twitter at Marvel A Podcast. You can email the show at marvelalliancepodcast@gmail.com. You can follow the Geek Ultimate Alliance Network on Twitter at GUA Pod Network. Feel free to tweet, email if you want to provide feedback, fact or fictions, ask questions, let us know your theories about where you think WandaVision's going at that point. Continue to rate and review the podcast on Apple Podcasts or whichever platform your podcatcher choice may be. Thank you all for joining us in the chat. We really always enjoy that. Thank you all for listening. Stay safe out there, everyone. And as Stan the Man would say, Excelsior, true believers.